Good morning, Murder Church. What is up? We've made it through another weekend and into another episode of Murder Church. Episode 38 today. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Wow, Feral Friday was absolutely insane. Went a little bit off the rails. If you did not see Feral Friday, we're coming at you hot this morning. I'm coming at you hot this morning. We're going to be chilling out for just a few hours per usual on a Sunday morning Murder Church. Got a little bit of stuff to go over. And let's rock and roll. Thanks everyone for being here.
Let's rock.
Yo, everybody, what is going on? Murder Church is on the air. I appreciate everyone for being in here. Please give that a share on the old X machine and any social media that you may be using. I want to check and see where we are at from Friday night on a t-shirt here. We gave out three awesome stickers to Miss Motherfucking Dina Friday night before we even went to kick. And then when we got the kick, we started working on a wheel that is going to be for a t-shirt. And again, wheels in the future are going to be for different things. If we get through this t-shirt wheel, I'm going to give away one of the Kool-Aid coffee mugs here this morning. Let's see where we're at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're halfway through a wheel already for a t-shirt this morning. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Wow. If you did not see Feral Friday, if you were not here for the show on Kick, it's gone. It's gone. That show is gone. The only way you may possibly see it, and that's just maybe, will be on the old Patreon, and that's where that would go. That show was off the rails. I had no beer. I only took shots, and by the end of it, I was highly intoxicated. Let's just say that. It was a fun night. We watched Cops, Shots Fired, which is absolutely freaking insane. It was wild as shit. But yeah, that episode I took it down immediately. Recorded and took it down immediately. Again, may pop up there in the old Patreon. That is where I'll put special things. Per the usual, Cash App. Actually, Cash App is still down. I didn't look at it. Fuck. Venmo, PayPal, subbing up people, gifting, or giving money here on YouTube. All that will get you on the wheel. And we got a physical wheel here, folks. I love seeing everybody in here this morning. And let's see who we got. Actually, Shelly, Pokemon this morning. I want to show this because she put this morning here on the old X machine. She said, look what I broke out today. Tis the season, and I'm going to be planning another one of these. What do we got? Boom. Horror movie marathon part 1. Okay. Shelly Pokemon last year. I think she made it all the way through. Will you make it all the way through this year? Keep an eye out for that. It'll probably be a little bit closer to Halloween. Probably got about a month or so to do some planning, but I am going to do some planning and some promoting on that because hopefully it'll be good. Let's see who's in here. God damn, the shots were crazy. The shots were too much. Where's the pickle Stacy coming in here? Wildside coming in here. No, the rants. I haven't even rewatched it, is what's crazy. Like, again, that will exclusively be a Patreon thing. That was taken down immediately. We don't need no clips made from that one. Ember Burns in here. The beautiful Ember Burns. I hope you're doing good, Ember. Jersey Jen popping in, Sheila Duffy in the house, Bassett Page in the house, Kai in the house, Pokemon, of course. Oh my god, it seemed like it was a fun time. Oh fuck yeah, Pammy. Pam got her stickers. Hell yes. She's got some more shirts coming down the pike real soon. And let's not forget the bells. Hold on, before we even get started here, I want to make sure. First of all, Don's a fun. Did it work? Nope, let me fix that. Hold on, I had to restart yesterday, but I was thinking about it for once. Stream Deck, let me set my guy up. We can't miss the bells. And I was trying to play Dan's a Fantastic Man. Let's see if it works this time.
Dan's a fantastic man.
There it is. Dan's a fantastic man. Welcome in here, ladies and gentlemen. Murder Church on the air, ready to go. Dizzy in here. Oh god, yeah, we've done it a few times. Good morning. Yeah, it wasn't good. Michelle in here early this morning. Love to see it. Hell yeah, Michelle getting through the door. She kicked through the door. She just took that foot and went boom. What's up, motherfuckers? Taryn Dusty in here. BGOG. Hope I didn't miss anybody. Simi Sharp's in here. Debbie Blair's in here. Love all you guys, seriously, man. You guys make this thing And not just me up here on the internet talking to myself and looking like a fool. I got another killer week for you lined up, though. I've got specials this week. I've got the regular shows this week. I've got a lot of cool stuff in the works, and I've got something that I need to put together, and I want to put together with another creator who we've been kind of talking to as well. We're moving. Boots are on the ground out here at Publicly Buzzed, and I think that you guys see that. I think you guys know what's going on. So this morning we're starting out here, Murder Church, of course. We're on video 99, okay? Today, LA County Sheriff's Department criminalist James Carroll takes the stand, and we're going to be spending about an hour and 10 minutes with him this morning, and we'll see exactly how far we get today. Again, holy shit. I'll keep an eye on all the apps and whatnot, and we'll keep rolling here, baby. Boom! We'll start out hot, though. Semi-sharp before I even get over there. Coming through with a $2 holler. Thank you so much, Shimmy, baby. Simmy, thank you so much. Let me get you on here real quick. Real quick, baby. Well, don't lose my spot. Boom. We are 5 away from a t-shirt. And if you were unaware, which you probably are not, we have the dankest merch in true crime. I'll fight anybody. In the streets about that. Anybody wants to go. I'm going to have to go make some coffee, though, once we get this thing started per usual, which I will go do. And I'll be chatting and watching on my phone. I feel like I'm forgetting something. I don't know what it is, but we will get there if I am. Oh, dude, more Chris is coming. Yeah. More Dr. Meller's coming. Another special guest. We have some cool stuff, and that Stephen Stern's, series is going to be going on for probably about 3 to 5 weeks, I would imagine, and maybe even a little bit further than that. We're diving into the tapes, the interviews of Stephen Stearns, who was an absolute, horrible human being walking planet Earth currently. You know what? He's not walking planet Earth anymore. He's locked up for good fucking reason. But he is facing death in the state of Florida. So, all right, guys, let's rock and roll. We've been gabbing for a minute here. I love you guys so much. Let's get it. Let's get in there. We'll start her out. Let me get my fills up here. Boom. Let me get a little shadow. Boom. Let me get a little witness. Boom. And let's see. We got to change the name. Let me get this guy's name real quick, and then we'll go. Also, let me get the sound. I'm prepared. I spent all day editing up a video for wrestling, my wrestling channel that dropped at 8 this morning. I'm going to be asking you guys to please go and check that out after this one. It's another wild-ass story. It's a short one. It's about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But yeah, we'll get there. You guys rule. I love you guys. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Let's do it.
Of items in front of you sitting on the witness stand. If you want to step those to your left or wherever, thank you. Give yourself a little room. I certainly don't mind.
Alan Jackson, starting this off.
Okay, you comfortable? Ready? Can I get you anything?
Fine, thank you, though.
All right, Mr. Carroll, why don't you tell the jurors what you do for a living, please?
I am a criminalist employed by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I specialize in the analysis of firearm and tool mark evidence.
Tell me what the duties of a criminalist in LA County who specializes in tool mark analysis vis-a-vis firearms, what do those duties include?
The duties are varied. I'm responsible for the analysis of potentially any type of firearm or ammunition evidence as well as tool mark evidence. That can include the test fire and function testing of firearms to assess operability, the comparison of ammunition components to a suspected firearm, such as bullets and cartridge cases, to determine whether or not a particular firearm fired those items. I can perform other analyses such as the restoration.
Seriously, dude, that's fucking amazing. That's dope as shit, bro. Seriously.
Of serial numbers, analysis of certain specific types of gunshot residue, crime scene investigation for the documentation and recovery of firearms-related evidence, and as I said before, really any type of analysis involving firearms or ammunition evidence, as well as tool mark evidence, identifying tools to tool marks.
We'll talk in more depth as we proceed along in your direct examination about what tool mark analysis is. For those of us who are uninitiated, you'll be able to explain kind of what that includes. Let me ask you generally, however, based on what education, training, and background do you have that allows you to perform those duties, including tool mark analysis and serial number recovery, firearms analysis in general? Tell us about your education, your training, and your background.
All right, I'm gonna get some
I have
coffee,
a
guys. I'll be
bachelor's
right
degree in
back.
biochemistry from the University of California at San Diego. And that's where I received my, what I would call my introductory training into science and fundamentals of science. I also have a master's degree in criminalistics from the California State University at Los Angeles. And my thesis work had to do with firearms and ammunition related analyses. When I was hired by the Sheriff's Department approximately 9 years ago, I was assigned to the firearms identification section, where I began a training program that is consistent with the guidelines of the Association of Firearm and Toolmark Examiners. That training lasted almost 2 years. It was taught by senior members of the firearms section who combined for over 100 years of experience in the field. And we covered all of the major areas of analyses, including the duties I've already explained to you. I'm also a graduate of the National Firearms Examiners Academy, which is a one-year training program sponsored by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Most of that training took place in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area with instructors from around the country who specialized in the various topics that we studied. I've received training from the FBI, the California Department of Justice, the California Criminalistics Institute, as well as various firearms and ammunition manufacturers. I've conducted scientific research in my field, and I have published findings in professional peer-reviewed journals and have presented findings at professional seminars. I've taught firearms identification. I've provided training to firearms examiner trainees, college and university students, as well as detectives and investigators. As I mentioned, I've been in this field for approximately 9 years, and I'm a member of the California Association of Criminalists, as well as the Association of Firearm and Toolmark Examiners.
Mr. Carroll, did you actually respond to the scene of 1700 Grandview Drive on or about February 3rd, 2003?
I did.
About what time did you get there?
I just need to refer to my case notes to tell you the time.
With the court's permission?
Yes.
Sure.
I responded on February 4, 2003 at approximately 1:15 in the afternoon, 1:15 p.m.
And you engaged in certain analysis at the crime scene itself, correct?
I didn't actually perform the analyses, but I facilitated some analyses.
All right, and that included some sound testing, correct?
Correct.
But you weren't doing any of your firearms or tool mark analysis at the crime scene itself, correct?
That is correct.
And at the time that you got there on February 4th, 2003, the bulk of the evidence, I guess, had already been removed. For instance, Ms. Clarkson was no longer there.
That is correct.
The chair was no longer there.
Correct.
And certain items of evidence, physical evidence, including certain weapons, had been removed, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. I want to talk about those for just a second, and I want to go through this kind of systematically in several different categories, and I'll tell you when I'm changing gears. You'll recognize it by my questions, I guess. And the first thing I want to ask you about is a .38 caliber Colt Cobra revolver, and ask you if you received any weapon that fits that description with regard to this particular case, and were you asked to engage in any analysis of that particular weapon?
I did receive such a firearm, and I did perform analyses on it.
All right, I want you to take a look at what's been previously marked for identification as People's 26. And I'm going to show you a couple of different items. First of all, this photograph, People's 26. Do you recognize that photograph?
It appears to be the Colt Cobra revolver that we've just been discussing.
Okay, and when you say it appears to be, it's because you're sitting about 20, 25 feet away from it. It's an enlarged picture and probably not the most discriminating photograph you've ever seen, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Did you receive photographs of this weapon, or did you actually receive the actual weapon?
Both.
All right. I'd like you to take a look at what's been previously marked as People 67. Assuming that's not you. People 67 for identification is actually, I believe, to your right, what's been marked as the actual Colt Cobra weapon. And you'll have to look through, I'm going to leave it to you to look through the items of evidence in the evidence bags to determine where each weapon or item of evidence is.
Well, would you like me? There's several items in here.
That is an evidence bag that the court clerk has conveniently put together, and I think there are several items in that.
This is marked Exhibit 67.
All right. Go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind, open that box and tell me, without touching the weapon at this point, tell me if you recognize that particular weapon.
I might need to remove it. It's in an envelope. Would you like me to do that?
Do you have gloves?
I do.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I've opened the box and I've removed an envelope. And I'm removing the contents of the envelope. And this is a Colt revolver, and I verified it is unloaded.
So that's safe insofar as the loading is concerned, that's safe to handle right now, at least in your hands?
Yes, it is.
All right. What's the big white strap that's going through that revolver?
Well, this is a plastic tie. It's called a flex cuff, and it appears to be being used to prevent the cylinder from being closed, sometimes a safety precaution.
And would that, insofar as safety is concerned, would that prevent the weapon from operating normally?
It would certainly interfere.
All right. When you received the gun, did it have that flex cuff through it?
It did not.
What was the condition of the gun when you received it?
Well, I received it in a box. I believe this is the box here before me. The revolver was unloaded, and I received it with some ammunition.
Tell me about how in the crime lab, and you were physically at the crime lab, correct? That's where you engaged in this analysis. That's where you work at the physical plant, correct?
Yes, I work at the crime laboratory.
All right. How does one in your position receive items of evidence, specifically guns, during the course of an investigation?
There can be a number of ways. I can recover a firearm myself at a crime scene. I can receive it from an investigator, from our evidence unit, or from another analyst.
How did you receive this one?
I received this from another analyst, Dr. Harold.
Was there some sort of, or is there in place some sort of protocol for utilizing lab receipts and file numbers, sheriff's file numbers, to make sure that we're talking about the same items of evidence as it moves through the crime lab to different departments?
Yes, there is a procedure.
Okay, and what is that procedure, basically?
Well, we track things in a number of ways in our laboratory. We keep track of the agency file number associated with the case. And internally in the laboratory, we issue evidence items a laboratory receipt number. It's a unique identifier. It's used once and only once. And we use that to track the movement of evidence throughout the laboratory and maintain a chain of custody.
Concerning this Colt Cobra, Mr. Carroll, you indicated that you also received some items of ammunition with that Colt Cobra. Is that right?
I did.
Describe that for the jurors, please. What did you receive?
I received a fired cartridge case. That is sometimes called a shell or a casing, but properly called a cartridge case. It was in the fired condition. And I received 5 live cartridges.
Did you examine this particular weapon as well as the 5 live cartridges and the expended cartridge case?
I did.
How did you well, I guess I should ask you this. First of all, you're holding the weapon. When I asked you to describe your analysis, let me just ask you this up front. Do you need the weapon? Would it be better if you had the gun in front of you to explain to the jurors how you perform that analysis? I don't want you to get a cramp sitting there holding that gun up.
It might be helpful to see visually how things operate.
Let me offer you this. May I approach?
Yes.
This is just a clean manila envelope. Is there, and you can place that wherever you want to your convenience, to put the gun on. Is there some biological material that you noted or have noted during the course of your analysis on that gun?
Yes.
Is that why you're wearing gloves?
Yes, it is.
All right. Do you know what that biological material is?
Well, it's a red substance. It appears to me to be blood.
All right. Tell us, if you could, what analysis you engaged in from beginning to end concerning that Colt Cobra, the 5 cartridge cases, the 5 live rounds, rather, and the 1 expended cartridge case that you received into evidence.
I did a variety of analyses, and I'm happy to go through all of them. Would you like me to start in a particular?
I would, starting with what is it that we're looking at? Who manufactures that weapon? Where does it come from? How old is it, if you can establish that? And is it in working order?
This is a Colt model Cobra, like the snake. It's a .38 special caliber revolver. It has a capacity of 6 cartridges. And in fact, as I'm holding it here, I'm going to keep it pointed in this direction for safety, or maybe up or down. And so I don't want to turn it around to show you. I'll turn it a little bit. We can see that there are 6 firing chambers in the cylinder. It's manufactured with an aluminum alloy frame, a steel barrel and cylinder. Again, it has a capacity of 6 cartridges, 38 special caliber. Sometimes called a snub nose revolver in slang terms.
What is the overall length of that weapon?
It's approximately 7 inches, I believe.
And what about the barrel length?
2 inches.
All right, and that's where the kind of colloquialism snub nose revolver comes from, because it has a relatively short barrel, correct?
Correct.
All right. What's the serial number on that Colt Cobra?
B as in boy, 66475.
Are serial numbers generally, by the manufacturer, unique to a particular weapon?
They are required to be unique.
All right, federal guidelines require that, correct?
That is correct.
So that those weapons can more easily or more readily be traced insofar as ownership and tracing them all the way back to the manufacturer is concerned, correct?
Yes, among other reasons.
Okay. Let's talk about the color of the weapon. You first said that it is an aluminum frame, is that correct?
That is correct, aluminum alloy.
And tell us what the significance of an aluminum alloy frame versus a steel frame might be.
The difference from a practicality standpoint is weight. An aluminum alloy frame is lighter, so the overall weight of the firearm is less than a steel-framed version.
And as far as the weight is concerned, would that have any effect on the way that the weapon operates or functions?
With regards to the actual functioning, no, it really doesn't have much to do with it at all. It may have something to do with the amount of felt recoil. Again, it makes the firearm lighter, so if you're going to carry this with you all day, it's a little less of a burden, perhaps.
I want to go back to your first part of that answer. It may have some effect on the felt recoil. Describe for the jurors what recoil is and what you mean by the felt recoil may be different based on aluminum frame versus a steel frame.
Well, recoil is, in very general terms, it's the rearward movement of a firearm as it's being fired. As a bullet's being propelled down the barrel, one of Newton's laws of physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, causes the firearm to be pushed to the rear. That's referred to as recoil. When I use the term felt recoil, I'm referring to the recoil that the shooter feels or perceives.
A lighter frame will have more recoil, generally.
You may feel more recoil.
Okay. Going back to the frame itself, we heard some testimony yesterday from Ms. Brandelli. She said she wasn't a firearms expert. Since we've got you, might as well explain it. She talked about the bluing on the steel itself, or the aluminum, in this case, the alloy. What is the bluing? What does that refer to?
Well, because this is aluminum, technically it's not bluing, but it's very similar. The term bluing refers to a chemical process to produce a particular color or finish on a firearm. From where you're seated, it probably appears black, and roughly black in my opinion as well. When people describe this as maybe a blued firearm, they're referring to the color. And we're not talking about royal blue. Usually we're talking about something approaching black or real dark navy blue. Okay,
now tell us the difference between, real briefly, between a revolver and a semi-automatic pistol. What's the difference? How do they work?
Well, let's start with the revolver because I'm holding one and that might be easiest. With regards to a revolver, if we had it in this condition, minus this plastic strap, and we wanted to get it into operation, we would first need to load it. We can see that the cylinder is out to the side here. We can insert cartridges into the cylinder. Then, I'm probably not going to be able to do this here. Well, good enough to show you. We would close the cylinder. The firearm would then be ready to fire. And with this kind of firearm, we have two different options as to how we can fire it. We can either simply pull the trigger. If we do that, that causes the cylinder to rotate, the hammer to move to the rear, and then fall. And after the hammer falls, it will fire a cartridge if there is one. If we wanted to fire again, we could simply release the trigger and pull it again. We have another option. It's called single action fire. That's where we could manually cock the hammer. Cocking the hammer would cause the hammer to stay to the rear and rotate the cylinder one position, and then we could simply pull the trigger. Pulling the trigger would cause the hammer to fall. We'd fire a cartridge. With a revolver, the cartridge case remains in the cylinder. When we're finished firing, we could swing the cylinder out to the side and remove any fired or unfired ammunition components. We could start over. With regards to a
the Menendez brothers show on Netflix. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but holy shit, it's fucking good, man. It's really good. I'm on episode 4. Saw Shelly Pokemon in the chat there, said she finished it. It's pretty good. It's pretty intense, man. Something happened in episode 1 that I had to Google it immediately because I don't know anything about them. I know the crime, of course, and I know who they are. But I never dove into the Menendez brothers for whatever reason. And yeah, this one is wild. And coming off of season 1 of Monsters, I think it's called Monsters, the Netflix actual show. The first one was Jeffrey Dahmer. You got the Menendez brothers, and the next one's going to be Ed freaking Gein. All right, that's going to be nuts. Ed Gein's going to be crazy. Ed Gein was one of the first serial killers that totally spiked my interest when I remember being young, you know. I mean, I've always been into crime. You guys know I've talked about being a kid watching Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Literally a fucking child. Like, so yeah, man, like, Ed Gein. I remember the first time I learned about Ed Gein. Like, it was like, wait, what? What did he do? I'm sorry. Huh? It's fucked up.
Automatic pistol, another very common type of handgun. We usually start with a device called a magazine, sometimes called a clip on television, but properly called a magazine. Ammunition is loaded into the magazine. The magazine is most commonly placed in the hollowed grip area called the magazine well. If you watch television or do this yourself, you see people do that kind of thing. Through a series of mechanisms, a cartridge is fed into the firing chamber. When the trigger is pulled,
the detail that Netflix puts into these shows, when we get the Gein,
firearm fires almost immediately after the firearm fires, and the bullet passes down the barrel and flies downrange. A cartridge case is ejected from the firearm, and it essentially reloads itself from the magazine and is ready to fire again.
So in a revolver, you would not expect, even after having been fired, you would not expect to find an expended casing on the ground, for instance.
Well, in order for that to be the case, somebody would have had to manually remove it because it doesn't happen automatically.
All right. When a revolver is fired, and let's take a fully loaded revolver, for example, and a single shot is fired, and nothing else is done with regard to the hammer or the trigger or the cylinder of that weapon, where is the expended cartridge case going to remain?
It will remain in what I call the number 1 position or the top position, in line with the barrel under the hammer.
There are several, if you look at the gun face on, and we'll get to an exhibit in just a second that more readily describes that, but since you're describing this area of the gun, I might as well ask you now. If you look at the gun face on, does the cylinder remain exposed, at least for those areas open to the eye, looking straight down the barrel of the gun?
There are portions of what I refer to as the front face of the cylinder that are visible.
Okay. The one in the 12 o'clock position is going to be behind the barrel, correct?
Correct, and that's the one that was just fired.
Right. The one in the 6 o'clock position is behind a portion of the frame of the trigger guard, correct?
Yes, a portion of the frame.
All right. That is not a sealed chamber, is it?
Well, there's an opening on the front side, if that's what you mean.
That's what I mean. In other words, even when that cylinder draws down to the 6 o'clock position, that particular hole in the cylinder draws down to the 6 o'clock position, it's not sealed specifically, is it? In other words, it's just behind the frame, but it's still open. There's a cylinder gap there, is there not?
There is a gap. Cylinder gap is usually, we refer to that in a different way, but there is a gap there. And
I see some shares coming through here. Also want to shout them out. Sheila Duffy, the share on the X Machine. Thank you very much. Stacy, where's the pickles with the share on the X Machine? Taryn Dusty with a share on the X Machine. Hell yeah. Thank you guys so much. I'm looking for a couple more in here. Oh, that's it this morning, but thank you guys so much. All these shares freaking matter, man. I'm telling you.
You simply have the front portion of the frame called the front strap. You do have it blocking the hole, but there is space.
All right. Let's take a look at another exhibit that's been previously marked People 66 for identification. Take a look at the overhead and tell me, you've described receiving the Colt Cobra and evidence as well as 5 live cartridges and 1 cartridge case that was expended. Is this, People 66, a representative photograph of the Colt Cobra that you received as well as the ammunition?
Yes, it is.
And that's what you've been talking about, having looked at visually and examined visually at the beginning, correct?
That is correct.
Did you also look at the ammunition specifically, the live cartridge cases as well as the expended cartridge? I'm sorry, the live cartridges as well as the expended cartridge case.
Yes, I did.
Can you explain to us, and I'm going to ask Sudi to put on the overhead an additional exhibit. Your Honor, if we could have marked as people's next in order an exemplar.
It's 120 would be your next exhibit.
Thank you. This is an 8.5 by 11 document that bears a diagram that's a cutaway of a live cartridge, or what I think is going to be a live cartridge. People's 120. Take a look at that diagram and tell the jurors, if you could, what it is they're looking at. Describe a little bit, familiarize us a little bit with what a bullet is.
What we're looking at on the screen is what I call a cutaway of a cartridge. And it would help if I familiarize you with some terminology. A cartridge is a live, thank you. A cartridge is a live unit of ammunition, generally speaking, in the unfired condition. I'll use this laser pointer provided by Mr. Jackson. So the entirety of this item is called a cartridge. We have four major components. The thing at the top that I'm pointing to here, this is called the bullet. The whole thing is not a bullet. It's just this thing.
I will, Jessica. Yeah. I'd imagine that they, going back to the Menendez brothers thing. I'd imagine, how movies and Hollywood in general does stuff. So now that makes sense. And I will say this, I need more info. I need more information. That's the actual bottom line. But yeah, I will. I'll definitely keep my mind open to that for sure, Jessica. Welcome in, everybody, this morning. Appreciate it. Thank y'all so much. I see some folks coming through here. We're getting real close to a shirt giveaway this morning here on Publicly Buzzed. Pammy coming through. Oh, wait a minute. Let me get it out. She's hiding back there, hiding behind the chats. That's how you know you're having a good morning. The chats are blowing up. Hell yeah, Pammy. Thank you so much. The bubble's fun. We all know what she's talking about. $5 holler coming through here. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Pammy. Let me get you right here on the list. We're getting closer, baby. We're getting closer. We're getting closer all the time. Get you right here. And then I think I saw another one right underneath it. And if you're unfamiliar with the will, folks, let me just pop this up real quick. Boom! Just got to ask about it. You just got to ask about the will. We got a will here, and it's a physical will. I might need a new will here soon. I've been beating the hell out of this will. We've had a lot of spins on this will. And I mean a lot of spins. I'm not even messing around when I say that. Sheila Duffy, 99 cents. $1 coming through here. $1. Thank you so much, Sheila. Putting you right here, girl. And the possibility of getting another shirt. I know Sheila and Pammy are multiple winners here. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're getting close. What are we, 3 away? That's what I'm talking about. We'll be there. I bet we hit a t-shirt this morning. I already see the fine folks in here letting other fine folks know. And again, if we get through this morning, Meg, good morning. If we get through this morning, we're going to give away a awesome Drink the Kool-Aid coffee mug. Let me just show that off real quick. Just real quick. This guy right here, going to be giving that guy away next. How would you like to be watching Murder Church, drinking your coffee out of this guy? Huh? It could be happening soon. We just got to get through this one. Thank you all so much coming through here. Lovely people. Sinead coming through here. Ask about the will right there. And showing off her 2-month badge of being a Buzzed to Confused level member, which is unbelievable. And Sinead is absolutely unbelievable. I talked to her privately. I got to hear her awesome Irish voice. It was fucking cool. It was really cool. I love the Irish accent so much. And I told her in a message, I feel like Ireland is calling out to me. I don't know if that's a homeland thing or what, but I feel like I do need to go and visit. It's just the truth. Thank you so much. And let me give you an anniversary, huh? Because it is a 2-month anniversary, baby.
Happy anniversary.
You're damn right. I appreciate it every single day. Couch Juror 199. Will Wars. The Will Wars have commenced, and we are getting a little bit closer. Let me check and make sure I'm not missing anything over in the apps. I sometimes miss those. And I don't want to miss anybody here. Thank you so much, Couch Juror, on there. I see Sinead's right under that one. Let me just make sure I'm not missing. Oh, nope. We're still good over there. Again, Venmo and PayPal are the only thing that actually open. I don't know what's up with my Cash App, but Venmo, it works as well. Sinead with a $5.99. How's it going? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, working out, getting some stuff to Ireland for her right now. She won 2 shirts back to back and also purchased another shirt, was absolutely unbelievable. I can't thank you enough for all the love. And I think we might be one name away now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. One name away till we give away a shirt and then move on to the possibility of a coffee cup. All right? That's what I'm talking about. Let's keep rolling.
At the top, in the nose area. That's called the bullet. That's the part that passes down the barrel and potentially flies down range. That's our first component. We have behind that, we have a propellant, gunpowder. It's our second component. In the base, we have a primer. That's the portion that's struck by the firing pin of the firearm and sets the firing of the cartridge in process. And then finally, we have this thing. It's yellow colored in this diagram, sometimes called a shell or a casing, but properly called a cartridge case. So to recap, we have a cartridge as the live unit. It has a bullet, gunpowder, a primer, and a cartridge case.
So what happens when the hammer drops and strikes that the back of that live cartridge?
Well, on a firearm such as the Colt Cobra we've been talking about, the firing pin is mounted to the front of the hammer. So the firing pin passes through an opening in the frame and strikes the primer. Through a chemical process in the primer, there's combustion of some metals, lead, barium, and antimony. They burn, and a flame passes through a little hole just above the primer. That's called the flash hole. That flame, in turn, ignites the gunpowder. The gunpowder burns very, very rapidly, creating a tremendous amount of gas pressure. And that pressure is what propels the bullet out of the cartridge case, into the barrel, through the barrel, and then subsequently it flies down range.
Do you know the phrase gunshot residue?
Yes, I'm familiar with the term.
Tell us a little bit about what happens to what are the gases and what happens to the propellant and the gases, et cetera, when a cartridge is fired and the bullet travels down the barrel of the gun and then on downrange? What happens to some or all of those gases?
Well, the gases have to escape from the firearm somewhere. In the case of a revolver, referring to this, I believe it's People's 67, a large portion of the gases emerge from the muzzle, the open end of the barrel. And then some gases also emerge from, I'm not going to touch it because I don't have a glove on this hand, from an area called the cylinder gap. That's the area between the rear of the barrel and the front face of the cylinder. I mentioned gases, and we do have gases. We also have partially burnt and unburnt gunpowder particles. We can have other solid materials, a lot of them carbon-based, a variety of things, perhaps very small pieces of metal that could be stripped off of the bullet, and we have components of the primer as well.
How large if you know, how large a cloud, generally speaking, of this GSR debris, if you will, is the gun surrounded by upon discharge? And I'm going to use an example of a Colt Cobra revolver and .38 special spear ammunition, for instance, as an example. What kind of GSR cloud might one expect to exist around the fired weapon?
Do you mean surrounding it on the sides?
Correct.
The front?
The cloud in general.
That's getting into a study of gunshot residue of a different kind than I do.
Okay.
So I'm probably not the person to address the size.
The cylinder gap that you described does emit this gunshot residue, correct?
Absolutely.
All right, and the gunshot residue contains unburned powder, correct?
Yes, gunshot residue in general can contain.
Okay, what else can it contain?
Well, it can contain, as I mentioned, residues from the priming compound, a variety of gases, some carbon deposits, nitrite residues, a whole host of different chemical compounds.
And that includes particles of lead, and we're talking about microscopic particles, correct?
Oh, many of them are, yes.
Okay, microscopic particles of lead.
Yes.
Microscopic particles of antimony.
Yes.
As well as barium.
Yes.
Traditionally, the GSR components that emit from a gun when it's fired, correct?
Well, the three metals you just mentioned, we sometimes refer to those as primer residue. But yes, those are emitted.
All right.
shit. Pumpkin is getting on that wheel right now with a $4.20 donation from Kathy. Thank you so much. Good luck, Pumpkin. Pumpkin has been trying to get a shirt for a while now, and this could be the day. I feel it in my bones, Pumpkin. I'm looking at you, Pumpkin. Let's go, baby. Thank you so much. Get a little. I ain't even done one of these this morning. Hold on, huh? Stop messing around, Steve.
Give me the loot! Give me the loot!
Just also finished out a wheel. Boom. Good luck, Pumpkin.
Did you actually engage in any testing of this gun that included firing the weapon itself?
Yes, I did.
Describe that for the jurors, please.
Well, I fired it actually on different occasions for different reasons. On one occasion, in fact, the first time I fired it was one of the components of my operability testing. I needed to determine whether or not the firearm functioned properly, and I fired 4 shots as part of that testing.
Passing out the day.
Also, those 4 shots would later serve to assist me.
Not getting crazy-eyed Phil today. Oh, shit, my thing's messed up from where I was fucking around with something. Hold on, let me get, sorry about this. Got this off the fucking screen. Good Lord. That's my bad, guys. That's my bad, guys. Get right about. That was where I was messing around on Wednesday's stream, trying to get the videos correct. Hold on. We weren't that far off. There we go.
With comparison to other ammunition components. Sometime later, I did another series of shots, test shots with this firearm, and that was for the purpose of examining gunpowder particles that come out of the muzzle, the end of the barrel of the firearm at various distances.
I told you that I was going to highlight it when I change gears a little bit so we can kind of stay up with you. Now I want to talk about your testing of the gun itself and the results that you found. With regard to the weapon functionality, what did you...
Jersey Jan coming through. There we go. Okay, BGOG on the wheel. Thanks to Jersey Jan with a $2 holler. Thank you so much, Jersey Jan. Appreciate that. Sorry, I'm doing a little bit extra stuff here in the back also. And, but fuck yeah. Real quick. Okay. So yeah, I see what's happened though. I think the Pumpkin will be on starting the new wheel. Gotcha. BGOG is going to be finishing out this wheel. Sorry about that. Gotcha. I got you here. I got you. We're fixing this right now. So Pumpkin, good luck on. Pumpkin might win. Pumpkin might win a new coffee mug to drink their water out of. Yeah, that was my bad. Sorry about that. I'm fixing it. Boom, 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 boom.
Did you find?
Every time my fingers tap something, they go boom, boom, boom. Just shots fired.
But this weapon functions properly. I didn't detect any broken parts. The safety mechanisms are operable as they should be. In my opinion, this revolver is in what I would call proper operating condition.
You talked about safety mechanisms. Can you tell us a little bit about the internal and external safety mechanisms that this Colt Cobra employs?
This revolver actually employs 2 primary safety mechanisms, or maybe I shouldn't use the term primary, 2 major safety mechanisms. There's an internal safety just above the trigger guard and rear of it. It's referred to as the rebounder lever.
Hell yeah, Jessica.
And that actually...
$199 in the hills. What are we doing?
Banging.
Actually, to a certain extent, works in conjunction with another device that's in front of the hammer. It's referred to as a hammer block safety. And the purpose of those safety mechanisms is to prevent the firearm from firing unless the trigger is pulled all the way to the rear. For example, if we were to load this firearm...
Pumpkin's in the picture. We got eyes on Pumpkin. Ladies and gentlemen, Pumpkin. Look at Pumpkin. Is that Pumpkin, first of all? I'm not 100% sure, but is that Pumpkin? Pumpkin's like, gimme. I love it.
And cock the hammer and drop it. Maybe out of a second-story window or something. I'm just kind of making up scenarios. The revolver would not fire when it hits the ground.
Izzy, Seeking Justice, Sinead, all coming through with shares here on the old X machine. Thanks, guys.
The trigger has to be pulled all the way to the rear in order for it to fire. Those are the 2 significant safety mechanisms in this particular revolver, and they do function properly.
Is that in both double action and single action mode?
Yes, it doesn't matter. They function in both modes.
Okay, so let's take an example. For instance, let's say it's single action mode. In single action mode, if I understand your testimony correctly, is when the hammer is, say, manually cocked back to the rear, correct?
That is correct.
And it sits back to the rear, ready to fall forward upon the action of some other mechanism in the gun. Is that right?
That is correct.
And when it falls forward, you would expect, if it's functioning properly, that point of the hammer would make contact with that center fire primer and cause the ejection of the bullet, correct?
The firing.
Explosion of the bullet, I should say.
The firing of the cartridge.
All right.
Yes.
Now we've got the hammer pulled back. What you're describing as far as the safety mechanism is concerned, if I'm holding the gun and I don't have my finger on the trigger, okay, but I slam the gun down on the podium, will that gun fire?
Not unless something pushes or pulls on the trigger.
Okay, assume for purposes of my questions that nothing is touching the trigger, but I slam it down on the podium or the desk, or slam it down onto the ground.
Eyes on pumpkin, baby.
Will that gun fire?
It will not.
If I'm holding the gun in my hand,
Dude, I've got a ginger male cat, and dude, he is insane. He's out of his fucking mind. He's just doing whatever the fuck he wants at all. I love him. He's awesome. His name's Charles. His name is Charlie. He's an absolute psychopath, but holy shit, man, what is it in the RH? Like, they are just out of their minds. Like, he's chasing shadows. He's chasing stuff that doesn't exist, or does it? Because it's making me question everything. He likes a pet, but no, he doesn't. You know, he's like, oh, maybe you could pet me for just a second before I bite you. No, he's amazing.
someone slaps my hand hard with the gun in my hand, if it's in double action or single action mode, will that gun fire?
Even if they slapped your hand right off your arm, it would not fire.
If I'm holding the gun in single action mode with the hammer pulled back, and someone grabs the outside of the gun and shakes it back and forth while I'm holding the gun, if my finger is not on the trigger, Mr. Carroll, will that gun fire?
Again, as long as nothing is touching the trigger, it will not fire.
Are you telling us that this Colt Cobra was in such functioning order that something or somebody had to have pulled the trigger to the rear in order for the gun to fire?
Yes, all the way to the rear.
Have there been any modifications that you're aware of to that weapon?
No, I looked for modifications and I did not find any.
Is that something that you as a firearms expert would have been able to see had there been modifications?
Yes.
Did you apply any kind of a test to that Colt Cobra to determine the trigger pull? In other words, the weight that's required to pull the trigger back all the way to the rear to allow the hammer to drop in both double action and single action mode?
I did.
Can you describe that for the jurors, please?
How the test is performed?
Yes. And what it is that you're talking about testing.
Okay. We're referring to trigger pull. Trigger pull is the amount of force that has to be applied to the trigger in order to get the firearm to fire. Now, we talked before about...
He hasn't pointed the gun at the judge yet, has he? I can always think about that. From old Hannah's trial. I'll never forget that. Judge Dowhard, the best in the business.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
double action and single action modes of fire. And to refresh your memory, double action, we start with the hammer down. Pulling the trigger causes the hammer to move to the rear and then fall forward. Single action is where we manually cock the hammer, sometimes with our thumb, or you cock it with anything you like, and the hammer remains cocked. Pulling the trigger just causes the hammer to fall. Generally speaking, single action trigger pull is lighter than double action trigger pull because some of the work is already done. The hammer's already cocked. The way I perform this type of test is using some calibrated weights. I essentially hang what looks like a hook from the trigger, and at the end of that hook, I add weights.
Guys, Ottawa
I
has
keep
a
the
new-
firearm pointed straight up in the air, and I continue to add weight until the trigger pulls. And I repeat that a few times. I have a procedure for doing this to verify that I've determined the correct trigger pull. And would you like me to tell you what those?
I would.
Those are? I just need to refer to my notes. I don't remember numbers so well. The single action trigger pull ranged from 4 to 4.5 pounds.
Oh my God.
The double action trigger pull ranged from 11.25 to 11.5 pounds.
All right, so going back to my previous examples, now, instead of my hypothetical including my finger not being, do you know what it means to index your finger?
I do.
Okay. When you're firing a weapon, your firing instructor or your shooting instructor might tell you to index the gun or index your hand. That means putting your forefinger out along the frame of the weapon so that it's not on the trigger, correct?
Yes, that is what it means.
All right, let's take that away. And let me ask you a couple of questions about just logical questions. You said that something must act on that trigger in order for this gun, this Colt Cobra, to fire. All right? Now assume that I've got the gun in a single action mode with the hammer back. But now my finger is on the trigger. If I slap that gun down on the podium and my finger is on the trigger, it is possible, of course, for the impact to cause my finger to pull back on the trigger enough to fire that weapon, correct?
That seems possible.
All right, now instead of slamming my hand down on the podium, which doesn't feel all that good, by the way, now I've got my finger on the trigger, and somebody slaps my hand across, either left or right. And I've got my finger on the trigger now. With a 4 to 4.5 pound trigger pull, it's certainly conceivable that that's enough impact to cause that gun to go off, correct?
Yes, through causing your finger to pull the trigger, yes.
Assume for purposes of this question that I've got my finger on the trigger and the gun is in either double action or single action mode, and someone comes up and grabs my hand while my finger is on the trigger and begins to shake it back and forth or somehow manipulate my hand. At that point, since my finger is on the trigger, it's conceivable that that weapon could be fired, correct?
Yes, and again, your finger would have to, one way or another, pull the trigger.
So you've heard the phrase, the best safety for any weapon is your finger, correct?
Yes, I have.
The military, they use that all the time, correct? Your number one safety is don't put your finger on the trigger, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And that's because of the internal safeties that most weapons have, including this Colt Cobra, that they will not fire unless something is acting on the trigger itself. Is that right?
That is right.
So as long as, if for instance, somebody has their finger on the trigger, however they're manipulating the gun, if they have their finger on the trigger, that would be an inherently unsafe
Jessica for Justice coming through with a share, and Brooklyn's coming through. Hell yeah, appreciate it.
or dangerous mode to handle that weapon, correct?
Yes, unless they're intending to fire. Having the finger on the trigger is probably not the best idea.
As a matter of fact, as a firearms expert, you are very well aware of the proper protocol for firing a weapon, correct?
Yes.
And the only time you point a weapon with your finger on the trigger is if the weapon is ready to be fired, correct?
And my finger wouldn't be on the trigger unless I was intending to fire. Right.
Any other action on your part would be inherently dangerous or unsafe, and you would be taught not to do that, correct?
Yes.
All right. When you engage in test fires of the weapon, or in this case, test fire of this particular weapon, how do you capture the expended round, the expended bullet?
I have a few options available to me. The one that I prefer is to test fire the firearm into a tank full of water. It's essentially a large stainless steel tank. It's sitting on the ground. It's, I believe, about 2.5 feet wide, 10 feet long, and 3 feet high. There's a little port on one end. I place the muzzle of the firearm, the end of the barrel, into that port, and then I can fire. And water is a very special medium because it slows the bullets down in a very short distance while causing minimal, if any, damage to the bullets. So it's very effective and easy to use.
What was the reason or the purpose for you test firing bullets other than to determine the functionality of the gun itself? What good does it do to fire a bullet downrange?
If I need to compare, say, a crime scene or a coroner's bullet to the firearm in question, I'm going to need that bullet that I test fired to do my comparison. And also the cartridge case that results from my test firing, I might need that if I'm going to compare to
Thanks, Wildside. Appreciate you. A little fajita action. Let me fix her real quick. Like boom, boom, boom,
I call an evidence cartridge case or a question cartridge case.
So if I understand your testimony correctly, you as a firearms expert and an expert in tool mark examining, you can actually take an expended cartridge case, just the casing, as well as an expended bullet, a bullet that's been fired down the barrel and downrange, and you can compare those to a particular weapon. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you engage in such a comparison in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
Let's talk about, and here again, I'm going to change gears. Let's talk about the cartridge case itself, the expended cartridge case that you received in evidence along with those other 5 live rounds. Did you, and I guess I should mark as people's next in order, tab 81.
It's 121.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm placing it on the overhead now. It's a photograph of what appears to be 2 cases, the butt end, if you will, the back end, the stamped end, and I believe Mr. Carroll will explain what it is that we're looking at and why. Did you examine the expended .38 caliber cartridge case in this particular case that you received with the Cobra to any other cartridge case?
Yes, I did.
Explain what it is that you were doing. What analysis were you engaging in?
Well, with regards to this exhibit or with other, I did a few different kinds of analysis.
Okay, let's start with this exhibit and then move on to the other analyses.
Well, this exhibit is a photograph that I directed to be taken. On the left side, the object on the left, it's labeled as item 1. That is the fired cartridge case that I received with the Colt Cobra revolver that we've been discussing. What we're looking at is the head of the cartridge case, or the rear portion. And I'll use this laser pointer again. We can see some, what appears to be writing. It's actually a stamp. SNW 38SPL+P. And there are some dots adjacent to that. That's called the head stamp. It's information on the head of a cartridge case. Normally, head stamps in commercial United States ammunition, what I should say is domestically produced ammunition for commercial sales, such as this. It's disappeared. There we go. Are we done?
We're done.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make it a little bigger for everybody.
Oh, thank you. This is easier to see.
Work on a wheel here.
This is the information that comprises the head stamp. We have the marketer or manufacturer, S&W, Smith & Wesson. They once had an ammunition line. And 38SPL+P, that denotes the caliber. This ammunition is of a caliber called .38 Special. And also, just to orient you a little bit, this circular thing in the center, that's the primer. It's the flat bottom portion of the primer. And right in the center, there's another smaller circle. That's the impression that the firing pin of the firearm left on the primer.
The one on the left was the cartridge case, the expended cartridge case that was found at the 12 o'clock position in the Colt Cobra, correct?
Yes.
The one on the right was a test fire, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Did you compare those 2 cartridge cases to make a determination as to whether or not they were fired in the same firearm?
I did do such a comparison, but the one I used was not the one from item 30.
Okay.
I used a similar item.
Okay, so the photograph that we're looking at is simply to explain to the jurors the similarity of the cartridge case on the right as well as the cartridge case on the left, which was found in the weapon.
Correct. We're looking at the head stamp and some other features. Correct.
All right, and the cartridge case on the right, the head stamp on the right, where it says item 30, was recovered as loose ammunition elsewhere in Mr. Spector's house, to your understanding, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
All right. Tell us a little bit now. I want to ask you about the specific comparison that you did with a test fired cartridge case and the comparison against the item found at the 12 o'clock position in the Colt Cobra. Go ahead.
Would you like me to explain the process?
I would.
Well, first maybe I need to explain just some theoretical background into how this is even possible. One of the things I attempt to do, and I mentioned this previously, is I attempt to determine whether or not a particular cartridge case was fired in a particular firearm. So when I do that, I look for marks left on the cartridge case or on the primer that were left by parts of the firearm that will form a unique signature of that firearm. You see, when firearms are manufactured and various parts are manufactured, they usually go through a series of machining processes. And through these machining processes, and then through eventual use and even possibly abuse, there will be individuality to those particular items. Let's talk about the firing pin, for example. It's a machined component. On this type of firearm, they're often finished, the tip is often finished, sometimes by hand filing. So there will be some unique marks that, like I said, form a signature of that particular firing pin. So when I examine
starting to peek out of the corner of his eye now.
an evidence cartridge,
You know what? He realizes that this expert, this criminalist has one glove on, and he's like, is he coming after my fashion right now? Huh? I'm the most fashionable man in this courtroom.
Case, and I compare it to a test-fired cartridge case that I fire in this firearm, I look for correspondence or lack of correspondence of these signature-type marks. To do this, I use an instrument called a comparison microscope. It's essentially two microscopes that are hooked
Thank you so much.
together.
If you win, you're on this next one here. Good luck. Actually, you want me to spin it before you go? Sammy, hold on. Give me 2 seconds. Let's get a wheel. I just now got her going. Everybody in here, thank you so much. We're going to give away a t-shirt right now. Oh yeah, that's a good spin, baby. Good luck, good luck, good luck. That's a BGOG. BGOG, thanks to Jersey Gin also. Holy shit. Got lucky this morning. BGOG with the win, ladies and gentlemen. Almost a Willgate, but that was a BGOG. BGOG, getting it. Thank you so much. Is that BGOG's first will win also? If so, get at me, BGOG. Get at me through wherever you want, whether that's Gmail at PubliclyBuzzed.com or on X. Let me know what shirts you want, what size you need, and where to send it. Hell yeah. The next thing we're giving away today is a coffee mug. Okay, we're giving away one of these cool-ass Kool-Aid. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Murder Church coffee mugs. How cool would it be to be here on Sunday morning watching Murder Church and drinking your coffee in an actual coffee mug from the show? That'd be dope. First of all, let me get, boom, I just don't want to forget, boom, boom. Is BGOG still in here? Well, if they aren't, let them know when they come back in. BGOG. Yeah, I'm waiting for the shirt. Hell yeah. Nice. And Jersey Gin. Seeing it on that one. Nice. More folks coming through. Good morning. Kelly coming through here. Anybody coming through right now, really appreciate it. Hit the old like if you come through the door. We're rolling, baby. And we are now giving away a coffee mug. So get in there. The only way to do that is to get on the wheel. Well, I just want to get back to my place. Boom. We've got 2 names on there right now.
Through what's called an optical bridge. It contains a series of prisms, and it allows me to look at 2 specimens side by side under magnification.
Let's build this
So on one stage of the microscope, the way I do it, I usually place my test fire on the right stage and my evidence cartridge case on the left stage.
There we go.
I, using the microscope, examine these cartridge cases, and I look for particular marks that might be left by the firearm. And depending on what I see, I might be able to reach a conclusion about whether or not the cartridge case, the evidence cartridge case, was fired in the firearm.
All right, but what if there are 2 guns that come off the assembly line, one right after another? You got 2 38 Special Colt Cobras made by Colt. They're on the assembly line. One's number 100 and one's number 101. Aren't they going to be exactly alike?
No, not at the microscopic level that I'm examining them at. I mean, sure, if we took number 100 and number 101 off the assembly line and we just held them like I am now and we looked at them, they would appear to be the same. But at the microscopic level, they're not. In fact, there have been a lot of validation studies in my field to determine these types of things. I've even participated in some where we've taken firearms that came off of the same assembly line. The parts were manufactured one after the other using the same equipment by the same operator, the same cutting tool, and yet we can still distinguish one from another. Again, I think I touched on this briefly. It has to do with some of the random imperfections that occur in the surface of the metal as it's being machined. Those are beyond control. Even if we didn't want those to exist, we can't really help it. We can't see them without magnification. That's why I use a microscope when I'm looking at these things.
So there are, if I understand you correctly, that Colt Cobra right there has microscopic scratches, microscopic imperfections from the tooling mechanism from its manufacturer that will always be with that weapon and no other weapon are going to have the exact same microscopic scratches and imperfections, et cetera. Is that basically what you're saying?
Generally, when you say always with this particular firearm, it is possible that somebody could intentionally remove them.
Right.
But barring anything like that, they will be with this firearm over an extended period of time, and they will form a signature of this firearm, making it distinguishable from all the other Colt Cobra revolvers of the same make and model.
Okay, and you can do that microscopic analysis, that comparison analysis, with both the cartridge case that the hammer falls on, correct?
Yes,
As well as the expended bullet that travels down the barrel, is that right?
that is correct.
Now let's change gears one more time and explain to the jurors what it is that you're looking for on the expended bullet as it travels down the barrel and the comparison that you make of those things.
Well, when we talk about the barrel of a firearm, let me explain how, in general terms, a barrel is made. On a firearm like this, it starts out as a solid piece of metal. A hole has to be drilled. The hole is then reamed to size, and then grooves are cut in the barrel. You might have heard, you might have firsthand experience with what is referred to as rifling in the barrel of a firearm. Rifling is a series of grooves that twist in either clockwise or counterclockwise. Those are the only two options. You have a series of grooves in the barrel of the firearm, and they twist for the purpose of imparting a spin to a bullet to stabilize it in flight. Well, the process of manufacturing those grooves and the areas in between the grooves, which are remaining, we create through machining a lot of random imperfections. And again, we form a signature of this firearm. So as a bullet is fired through the barrel of the firearm, it's scratched, for lack of a better term. It's real simple to envision it that way. It's scratched by the imperfections inside the barrel of the firearm. And when I examine a bullet, it looks like it's got a bunch of scratches on its surface. And I look at a pattern of scratches. I look at the height, width, depth, spatial relationship, and contours of these scratches. And I compare a test fire bullet to an evidence bullet.
With regard to the comparison, you have to have something to compare your test fire to, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You had, with regard to the expended casing, you had the casing that was in the 12 o'clock position. You would just remove that and take a look at it microscopically and compare your test fire cartridge case to that, correct?
That is what I did, yes.
What about an expended round? Did you receive anything from the coroner's office in this particular case concerning an expended round?
Yes, I did.
Hey, describe that for the jurors, please.
I actually received a total of 3 envelopes from the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. Those envelopes were marked with the name Lana Clarkson, and I opened those envelopes and examined the contents. Some of them contained very small fragments of gray metal. It appeared to be very small lead fragments. Those were not suitable for comparison. They were just too small and they're the wrong part of the bullet. But in one of the envelopes, there was a large bullet fragment, and that item was suitable for comparison, and I did compare it to my test fire from this Colt Cobra revolver.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to mark as People's 122 an 8.5 by 11 document that bears 2 photographs purporting to be the recovered bullet front and back from the coroner's office.
So marked.
Thank you. Mr. Carroll, I'd like you to take a look at People's 122 for identification and tell me if you recognize what's depicted in photo A and photo B.
Those appear to be photographs of the large fragment, the large bullet fragment that I examined that I subsequently compared to this firearm.
Did you receive, by the way, do you document the lab receipt number for items that you receive for comparison purposes and during your analysis?
Yes, I do.
Did you receive item number 92, which included 92-C1, C2, and C3 from the coroner's office under lab receipt number J as in Juliet 309096?
Yes, I did.
All right, so those numbers all comport with your analysis, the item that you were analyzing.
Yes, they did.
All right, and this was purported to be a projectile that was recovered from the lower portion of the back of Lana Clarkson's head, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Did you compare, was the item that's depicted in photo A and photo B, and by the way, those are the same thing, just one's looking at the front and one's looking at the other side, correct?
Yes, that's what it appears to be.
All right. And those photographs are consistent with your memory of what it was that you were analyzing?
Yes.
Did it have comparison value, that projectile that you received from the coroner's office?
Yes, that one did.
All right. Tell us what your comparison of the item numbered 92 in People's depicted in People's 122 with the test fires that you engaged in from the Colt Cobra.
You mean my results of?
Yes. Tell us about your analysis and what the results were.
Well, I performed the analysis I've described using the comparison microscope. I compared one of my test fire bullets from the People's 67 Colt revolver to that item, which is what I call item 92-C1. I compared those items to one another, and I concluded that they were fired from the same firearm. Since I know which firearm my test fire was fired from, I was therefore able to conclude that this bullet was fired from the Colt Cobra revolver in People's 67.
Were you able to also scientifically establish that the cartridge case that was supplied with the Colt Cobra found in the 12 o'clock position was in fact fired in that Colt Cobra?
Yes, I did reach that conclusion as well.
All right, aside from the obvious fact that it's sitting in the gun itself, you also scientifically corroborated that based on your comparison microscope analysis or microscopic analysis, that cartridge case was in fact fired in that weapon, correct?
That is correct.
And you're confident in that analysis?
I have no doubt.
No doubt. And does the same go for the bullet? The bullet that was recovered from the head of Lana Clarkson was fired, in fact, from that Colt Cobra, correct?
Yes, it was.
And scientifically, you have no doubt?
Correct.
All right. Did you also, and here again is a gear change, did you also engage in a powder pattern test for this Colt Cobra?
Yes, I did.
What is a powder pattern test?
I was interested in, for a number of reasons, examining the pattern of gunpowder particles, both unburnt, partially burnt, and perhaps completely burnt gunpowder particles that emerge from the barrel of this firearm when it's fired. And I was interested in assessing the diameter and density of the pattern at various distances.
Why was that important?
There was a question early on in the investigation as to where this firearm was relative to Ms. Clarkson at the time of the shot. So this was towards reaching a conclusion in that regards.
And how does that powder pattern test help us determine distances of muzzle?
Well, I received information from Dr. Pena at the coroner's office. He and Dr. Harold as well explained to me that gunpowder particles were recovered from the hard and soft palate in the mouth area. I'm not real good with anatomy, but in the rear of the mouth area of Lana Clarkson. And Dr. Pena reported to me that there was no stippling on her face or around her lips. Stippling is a series of punctate abrasions or little pinpoint abrasions on skin. Gunpowder particles can leave those types of abrasions. In fact, they often do when a gun is fired at close range. So the absence of, back up a second, the absence of stippling, but the fact that there were gunpowder particles embedded in her throat required that I do some powder pattern testing to try to figure out where the firearm was in order to leave those conditions where there's no stippling on her face, but yet there are gunpowder particles in her throat.
What was the result of your testing? How did you conduct that actual test, and what were the results?
Well, I fired this firearm at what I call a test material. It's a type of cloth at various distances. I started at contact. That's where the barrel of the firearm is in contact with the surface, and I moved back an inch at a time. So I fired a shot at 0 inches, 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, and I moved back a certain distance. And I assessed the size of those
Yeah, I hope his ears were burning anytime we were talking about Dr. Pena. I miss Dr. Pena.
patterns. What I was interested in is not knowing how large Miss Clarkson can open her mouth. I stood in front of a mirror with a ruler to see how large I could open my mouth. And
Is Dr. Pena the only witness or even anyone a part of any trials that we've done that's gotten an actual emoji? I think so.
Let's say approximately 2 inches. Some people say I have a big mouth. That's unrelated. I held the ruler up next to my mouth looking in a mirror, and I assessed about 2 inches. So just for the sake of my thought process at the time, I don't know how big Ms. Clarkson's mouth is, but knowing that, I tried to assess how large the pattern would be such that if the firearm was too far away, let's say the pattern was 3 inches at a given distance, well, that would leave stippling. So the gun had to be closer than that. So I determined what diameter of powder pattern I get at certain distances at which I test fired the firearm to see how far out of her mouth, if at all possible, the firearm could be and still leave gunpowder particles in her throat, but no stippling around her mouth.
So there was no, your understanding in conducting this test was there was no punctate abrasion marks on the outside indicating stippling, but there was some suggestion of stippling on the inside of her mouth and her throat, correct?
Well, there was, but what I was more interested in that is the presence of gunpowder particles embedded in her palate.
Okay. And based on that testing, or that series of those series of tests, assuming that the victim, Lana Clarkson, was in fact shot through the mouth and into the soft palate of the back of her throat, if her mouth, as you said, was open approximately 2 inches or so, and no more than that, the lack of stippling on her face and lips, the fact that there was, and assume for purposes of my hypothetical, that there was dental material pulverized and impacted on the front ramp sight of that weapon, that Colt Cobra, can you reach a conclusion based on your testing where the muzzle of the gun was when it was fired into her mouth?
Yes, I can.
What is that conclusion?
Well, we're taking a lot of factors now into consideration. The fact that there's what was reported to me as dental material on the rear sight, I'm sorry, not the rear sight, the rear ramp of the front sight of this firearm, I'm pointing at it with my left index finger. That tells me a lot. That tells me that the front sight was beyond her teeth. In other words, more in her mouth than out of her mouth, on the inside of her teeth. And my powder pattern testing confirmed that, because as a result of my powder pattern testing, assuming a mouth is open 2 inches, and that's full opening for me, the firearm couldn't have been much more than an inch, inch and a half away without leaving stippling. So that, coupled with the tooth material on the rear of the front sight ramp, tells me that the front sight was beyond her front top teeth. I don't know what those are called. I think those are incisors. Beyond her front top teeth. So it tells me the barrel of the gun was in her mouth.
And that dental material on the front sight would be, on the rear ramp of the front sight, would be consistent with the recoil that you've talked about existing when the gun was fired, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Stretch a little bit here.
I'm going to ask if I could, I'm going to change gears a little bit. And I'm going to place, for the time being, is there a particular place that I should hold this other than the white?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. I want to ask you about a couple of other weapons. Did you receive in evidence a Smith & Wesson, and when I say in evidence, I mean evidence to you for your analysis, a Smith & Wesson Model 19?
Yes, I did.
All right. People 75 should be close to you somewhere up there, previously marked. And it may be an evidence envelope as opposed to an evidence box. And you might recognize it, Mr. Carroll, as item number 25.
Okay. Let me take a close look. I just need to remove this glove. I'm sorry, did you say item 75?
People's 75. The clerk would have marked it People's 75.
I do have a package marked People's 75.
All right, could you open that and tell me if you recognize its contents, please?
Yes, I do recognize this.
All right, how do you recognize that item?
Well, I was looking for the serial number just a moment ago, a unique identifier of this firearm, and this is the unique identifier that I recorded in my case notes.
Did you receive that at the crime lab from the Sheriff's Department?
Well, this has been in the crime lab. I examined this item at Central Property at one of our property holding locations.
All right, fair enough. And that's central property at the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Describe that gun for us, please. What is that?
This is a Smith & Wesson Model 19. It is a revolver, a 6-shot revolver. It fires .357 Magnum caliber cartridges, has approximately a 4-inch barrel, and it has a blue steel finish.
Can that weapon fire .38 caliber cartridges?
Yes, .38 special caliber, it can.
Just describe that. I thought those were two, I think all of us probably think those are two different cartridges. How can that weapon fire both Magnum cartridges, .357 Magnum cartridges, and .38 special cartridges?
Well, the .357 Magnum caliber cartridge was a later development than the .38 special caliber cartridge, and it's a very similar cartridge with the exception of its cartridge case is a little bit longer. So it was designed that way so that you could not fire the, for lack of a better term, more powerful .357 Magnum cartridge accidentally in a .38 special caliber revolver, which wasn't designed to handle that pressure. But it is safe, and it's designed so that you can fire .38 special caliber ammunition in the .357 Magnum caliber revolver.
When you received that item, or when you inspected that item, was it in fact with some ammunition?
Yes, it was.
Describe the ammunition for us, please. And Your Honor, while Mr. Carroll is looking through his notes real quick, I'd like to place on the overhead what's been previously marked as People's 79.
All right.
I don't know if that helps you or not.
It does.
Okay.
This revolver was received with 6 live cartridges. They were the Smith & Wesson brand .38 Special Plus P cartridges.
The same brand Smith & Wesson Plus P cartridges that were found in the Colt Cobra, with the exception of the one spear, correct?
That is correct.
So that we're talking about a lot of different ammunition, a lot of different guns, so that we're clear, the Colt Cobra that fired the bullet that killed Ms. Clarkson was loaded with 1 spear and 5 Smith & Wesson Plus P rounds, correct? Cartridges, correct?
Well, when I received it, one of those Smith & Wesson cartridges had been fired.
I understand. I guess I'm just asking broadly for the manufacturers.
Correct. 1 spear, 5 Smith & Wesson.
Okay. And that weapon, the .357 Magnum, had what ammunition with it?
This had Smith & Wesson .38 Special Plus P ammunition.
The same,
6 cartridges.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The same as the Plus P ammunition that was in the Colt Cobra.
Yes.
All right. The Smith & Wesson Model 36 has been previously identified as People's 76. Could you take that out of its envelope, please?
God.
This envelope has a tape seal, so I'm going to go ahead and break that seal.
Oh shit, Kelly Bobelli, the beautiful Kelly Bobelli, coming through here, fresh off hopefully an amazing vacation. Hope you had a great one. She's trying to get a coffee this morning. I hope she does. You know, if I could run you this right now for the 4, I would just bring that to you. Kelly, thank you so much. Getting on there for the possibility. That would actually be cool for a coffee cup, though. Hell yeah, getting you on the list right now. Kelly, thank you. Hide in the smoke. Give me a second. Slept funny on my shoulder.
I'm removing the contents, and I've verified that it is unloaded. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 36, 38 Special Caliber revolver.
I'm sorry. And that was previously identified as item number 26, correct?
Correct.
And that bears a serial number, if you don't mind me just going ahead and putting it in the record, J278803, correct? J278803. 8803.
That is correct.
All right. That's a .38 caliber revolver.
Yes, it is.
Did you inspect it to determine whether or not it was in good working condition?
Well, I didn't do a full laboratory analysis on this item, but in doing just a cursory examination, I didn't detect anything that was out of order.
And is the same to be said for the Model 19, the 357 that's sitting in front of Mr. Dixon?
Yes, that is correct.
What ammunition, if any, was found with the Smith & Wesson?
35 people hanging in here right now. I think I've got this. Hold on. Well, I might have said that. Yeah, okay. I've got 5 more memberships to gift out, and I'm going to give them up right now, baby. Let's see who gets these things real quick. Always got cool stuff coming through in the video section, and a lot of content for members exclusively here. And let's see 5 new folks get access to that. So who's going to get them? Last 5 for this month. LN23 hanging out back there. Welcome in here. Tayo Toys. Phil's lurking back there. Moonfox Studios grabbing one. Lawner Amber in the house. Hell yeah, Amber. And Unbronzed, if I could say it, Unbronzed Aussie Laura getting one as well.
Welcome to the party,
Get in here. Give them something in the chat. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Get in here. Anybody that just got membered up, seriously, go to the video section. Check out all the new videos. There's a bunch of them. But the last one that I put up about 2 weeks ago now is amazing. And there's more to come this month of exclusive content that is not available through just normal publicly buzzed free access. So get the hell in here. Love it.
And Model 36.
There were 5 cartridges, 38 special caliber cartridges, Smith & Wesson, plus P.
Is that a 5-shot or a 6-shot revolver?
This is a 5-shot revolver.
So it was fully loaded?
Yes, it was.
And those are the same plus P cartridges that you've earlier described having been, or consistent cartridges earlier described as having been in the Model 19, as well as the 5 that were in the Colt Cobra, correct?
That is correct.
People 77, and I bet I can help you with this one. That's the long, tall box in front of you. Could you take the contents of that box out and tell me if you recognize it, please?
May I stand up too?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm removing an orange or red case from this box. Removing the contents of the case. This is a high standard 12-gauge shotgun, and it is unloaded. I've just verified that.
God, that thing's huge.
Did it appear, or did your at least visual analysis, based on your expertise, appear to be in good working order?
Yes, it did.
All right. And you received this along with, or where was it that you conducted your initial inspection of this particular gun? Was that at Central Property also?
Yes, it was.
All right, that was along with these other guns, correct?
Correct.
With the exception of the Cobra.
Correct.
Yeah?
AJ, think about it. Think about your family.
You inspected all of the weapons that are in front of Mr. Dixon on the table, correct?
Whoa, that's a lot
Yes,
of
I
guns
did.
on the table.
All of them appear to be in working order, correct?
You too
Correct.
right
And
now.
in fact, when you test fired the Colt Cobra specifically, that was in working order. All the internal safeties were working, and the test fires resulted in the gun functioning properly, and you were able to get certain information from the test-fired cartridge case as well as the test-fired bullets, correct?
Yes.
All right. Did you also...
Guns come out. Phil's getting hot. He's getting pepped up now. Perked right up in his chair, didn't he?
examine certain holsters that were recovered from 1700 Grandview?
Yes, I did.
I'd like you to take a look at People's 70. I believe that's a physical item next to you. And it may have been previously marked as item number 2. Is that consistent?
Yes, I see a blue sticker, People 70.
Dude,
Okay, why don't you take a look at
I wanna see
the
that
contents of
next to
that
Phil right now.
envelope and tell me if you recognize it,
See
please.
that gun next to Phil's right now.
Opening this envelope. Lost a staple. Removing the contents. glove on for this. I just don't know the condition of this item. And I've removed the contents. This is a Hunter brand holster.
Tell us a little bit about that Hunter holster and whether or not you engaged in any research concerning the Hunter brand holster specifically.
Well, this is a Hunter Model 1100 holster. I did engage in some research about this holster, and this particular holster, it has what's called a size code on the back. It's size code number 7, and that, by referencing a chart, that allows me to determine what kinds of firearms that this holster is designed to hold.
Did you check on the model number of that holster?
I did.
What is that model number?
It's a Model 1100.
Is there any kind of a logo or a designation stamp on that item?
Yes, there is.
Describe that for the jurors, please.
It's on the back side of the holster. From where you're seated, it may just appear to be a crescent, but it's meant to be a powder horn. In the old days of black powder firearms, a powder horn was a cow's horn that was used to hold black powder for dispensing into the muzzle-loading firearm. So there's a powder horn, and in the powder horn, or on the powder horn, is the word Hunter, H-U-N-T-E-R.
Is there any significance to the powder horn existence on that particular Hunter holster?
Well, through some research, I learned that Hunter no longer uses this logo. The current logo is just the word Hunter in block letters. And in the mid-'80s, approximately 1985, the logo was changed from the powder horn logo to the current logo, which is just the block letters.
So that holster, you can readily say, is older than 1985?
Yes.
Okay. It was manufactured at or before 1985, correct?
Approximately, yes.
All right. What is that Hunter holster designed to fit?
Well, I can provide you with a list of firearms from the size chart.
Why don't you just tell us, generally speaking, what type of weapon that Hunter holster is designed to fit or accommodate?
It's designed to accommodate short barrel revolvers, sometimes, as we mentioned before, called snub-nose revolvers.
As a matter of fact, Hunter specifically
Taking that as a personal challenge, Afton. Oh, God, we paused right on the demon from hell himself. Phil Spector.
published certain revolvers that that particular holster was designed to accommodate.
This guy's in hell right now, annoying the fuck out of Satan. He's just like at all times at his door. Hey man, is there any way? Hey man, I'm worth $50 million on planet Earth up there. Satan's like, I don't give a fuck. Get back over there and getting beat to death by that. Beat to death. You're already dead. Get continually beaten for all eternity by that demon over there that also did some fucked up shit. You guys can take turns beating each other's heads in.
Accommodate.
Yes.
And was Colt Cobra one of those specifically designed specifically designated revolvers that Hunter holster was designed to fit?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Let's go ahead and take our recess. Keep in mind the admonition, ladies and gentlemen, we'll resume at 3 o'clock.
Yeah. All right, we made it through that. Holy shit. That was a good start.
All right, the party is with
3 minutes right now. We're going into part 2 with old James Carroll here, who is very thorough, very professional, and we learned that he knows what he's talking about in the way of guns and ammo. And yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting that they can tell the imperfections down to just like slight imperfections that while manufacturing the gun on the metal, everything's a little bit different, even though it's being made with the same exact machines, cut out the exact same way, probably with the same molds. There's still going to be imperfections where they can nail your ass. Everyone in here, thank you so much. Appreciate it. What a morning. We're going. Right now, we're working on a cup. Let me show that off. Hold on. We're working on giving one of these away right now. We've already given away
jurors and alternates are present.
we're working on giving away one of these right now. A Drink the Kool-Aid coffee mug. You're going to want one of these in your life, folks. You're going to want one of these bad boys. I can almost guarantee it. Look at this thing, huh? Look at this thing. And it's going to be a 15-ouncer that we're giving away here, okay? It's going to be one of the big boys. I don't know the difference. We got 11 and we got 15. We're giving away a 15-ouncer. So prepare for that if we make it. Let's see how close we are right now here on the wheel. Again, the Cash App is down right now, but the Venmo is wide open. 1, 2, 3, 4 names right now. So we still have a little ways to go, 8 names. And if we do not get it here this morning, of course, we will carry that over to Murder Church on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're new here, which you may be, we brought a lot of new folks in with the Diddy stuff that I did currently. You may not know that. We do a lot of different shows here. We do a lot of wild shows. I'm a very different type of channel within this genre. Let's just say that. I do a lot of different types of things, but we've attracted an amazing lot of folks here that are the Buzz Nation, and I'm very proud of what we have here, and it's fucking cool as hell. And we're gonna keep this thing rolling, man. Keep it rolling for a little while anyways. Keep it rolling down the road. I love it. It's growing every day. You guys are amazing. All the shares out there, all that stuff counts. It helps. It matters. If you're out there and you did not hit the like yet, do that. A lot of new folks just got membered up. Appreciate that. You guys fucking rule. Looking through the chat here real quick. Dixie, another demon in the corner, just burning his wigs over and over, making him go to brunch. Bald! Oh my God, I bet that's exactly what's happening. That is literal hell for Phil Spector right now. As he wakes up every morning, he starts to put it on. Everything's normal. It's a normal day, right? He doesn't even know that he's dead. He didn't even know that it's an off day. This is the best day of his life in 1986. Boom, the music's playing. He's like, I'm about to go hang out with who the fuck ever, go do some shit. And then all of a sudden, demon bust in. Boom, bitch. Nope. Reality check. Snatches that wig straight off his head, starts burning it. Every day it's a different wig, one of his favorite wigs. Every single day it burns it. I love that. And then, here comes his assistant, which is just one of, Satan's helpers, pulls out his book. Oh, it looks like you have a lunch date today, Phil. You're going to be seeing whoever the fuck. Boom, bald as hell. That is amazing. I want that television show right fucking now, Dixie. Patricia coming through here. What's going on? What are you doing? Oh, man. Yeah, go back and check that one out. Wednesday's Live is still up there. Yeah, we're going to be, that's a series, if that's one you're talking about, with Dr. Lee Meller. Great episode. And it's doing well, too. A lot of people are enjoying that. We do get a little crazy up in here. And if anybody is unsure about that, you would have found out on Kick Feral Friday, because that show went down immediately. As soon as Feral Friday ended, I took it down. That will only be available on Patreon, and it may be a minute before I do that, because I need to rewatch it. All right? Shit just got a little bit off the rails. I didn't have any beers, so I was taking shots, and shit just got crazy, and it was wild. I don't actually, that's a good, I'm glad you said that, Jersey Jen. I don't actually have these for purchase yet. I need to do that, but currently the only way to get these is through winning on the wheel. Miss Dina on Friday night, she won 3 of these bad boys with a wheel spin. That is the only way to get me Outer Church stickers currently. And I also want to get some more stickers. I want to get some more of our logos and get stickered out so we have more options. But that will be coming, so don't worry. Everybody in here right now. Chris Dewitt coming through here. What's up, dude? Hell yeah, man. Nah, dude, credit to you. You're the fucking man. You put that whole shit together, man. Love it, dude. And it's doing well. Like, it's doing really good. It's awesome. Like, it's a great conversation. You're diving deep. I saw your post last night. Holy shit. And everyone, yeah, rave freaking reviews right now. We coming in. We come in hot. We don't mess around. That's for damn sure. Hey, y'all know that I live day to day having a good time. That's the only way to do it. We're not here for a long time, folks. That's for damn sure. That's the only thing I learn daily doing this shit. Is you never know. And there ain't no way to take it too damn serious. Shouldn't be anyways. Let's go. We're going to keep rolling here this morning. Again, we're working on a coffee mug. Is that thing going to be yours? Huh?
President is here to floor. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. Mr. Carroll, just before the break, we were talking about the Hunter holster. You're aware, based on what was provided to you, you're aware that that Hunter holster was found in a bureau close to where the weapon was found, correct? The Colt Cobra.
I received that information, yes.
All right. Did you seek to, and you had talked about what Hunter designated as the appropriate weapon or style or type or size of weapon to be used with that holster. Did you seek personally to determine whether or not a Colt Cobra would fit in that holster and how well it would fit?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I selected a Colt Cobra revolver from my reference collection. So not the evidence firearm, but an identical Colt Cobra that I had available to me.
Does the, and I'm going to interrupt you real quick, does the Sheriff's Department firearms section have a pretty vast collection of exemplar firearms?
Yes, we do.
Describe that.
Well, we have a reference collection. It's essentially a working library of a variety of different types of firearms, handguns, rifles, shotguns, and they're used for situations where I need to actually examine a firearm other than an evidence firearm, such as in this case.
All right. Did you take one of those Colt Cobras as close to replicating the actual Colt Cobra in this case and try to figure out whether or not it would fit in the holster?
Yes, I selected an identical revolver, and I simply inserted it into the holster in question to see how it would fit.
When you say identical, what do you mean by how identical? How identical is identical, I guess?
Well, it's the same model, but Colt has gone through a few generations of Cobra model revolvers, and they've changed minor little features. I selected one with the same features, the same revolver.
So it was exactly like the Colt Cobra that's been booked into evidence as item number 1, just it happens to be a different specific gun, but exactly the same dimensions, the same weight, the same materials.
Yes, and I checked that when I selected the revolver.
Did you cause to be photographed the exemplar Colt Cobra being inserted, or after it had been inserted into the holster, the hunter holster?
Yes, I did.
First of all, what was your conclusion about the fit of the exemplar Colt Cobra into the hunter holster?
It was what I would call a proper fit. It fit snug and securely after I fastened the strap. There's a retaining strap on that holster. I inserted the firearm. It fits snug at that point, and I fastened the retaining strap. It snaps in place, and it fit properly, and the holster kept the firearm snug and secure.
You call it a retaining strap?
Yes.
Is that this strap right here?
Yes, it is.
All right, Your Honor, I pointed to, I'm going to have to refer back, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of, the number. This is People 70. This is if there are 2 straps on the holster, there's one closer to the narrow or tapered end and one closer to the mouth. I was pointing to the one closer to the mouth of the holster. Take a look at, if you will, the following photograph. And, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have marked as next in order People's 123, a photograph or a series of photographs, 2 photographs that purport to be the 38 Colt or a 38 Colt Cobra in the holster.
So marked.
Thank you. Take a look at these photographs marked People's 123 and tell me if you recognize A and B.
I do.
How do you recognize those photographs?
Well, I've reviewed them many times before today. These are the photographs we've been discussing, photographs of my laboratory exemplar Colt Cobra revolver in the holster in question.
All right, I'd like you to take a look at what's been previously marked as People's 78 for identification and tell me if you recognize the 2 holsters beneath the holster that's been displayed out here, the People's 70. Do you recognize those 2 other holsters?
Yes, I do.
Describe the manufacturer of the holster on the left that has been previously identified by the Sheriff's Department as item 50.
I just want to make sure I'm talking about the same item. You're talking about the one in the lower left?
That's the one.
Photo A. That is a Hunter brand holster.
All right. Were you able to get any more specific about the model?
Yes, it is a model 1100, the same as the other holster we've been discussing.
All right. Even though it looks a little bit different, it is the same general design from the same manufacturer and the same model number, correct?
Yes, it's larger because it's designed to fit a different firearm.
All right. One with it looks like a longer barrel, correct?
Yes.
Did that also have the powder horn logo?
Yes, it did.
So that Hunter holster is from the same era as the Hunter holster that's displayed on counsel table, correct?
Generally pre-mid-80s.
Pre-1985 specifically, correct?
Yes, approximately.
Take a look at the lower right holster that's been previously identified as item 52 in People's 123. I'm sorry, in People's 78. And tell me if you recognize that holster as well.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
Well, I directed this photograph to be taken, so I recognize the photograph. That is another Hunter Model 1100 holster.
So that also bears the Model 1100, but it's designed for a little bit different gun as well. Correct. Did that also have the powder horn logo?
Yes, it did.
So that was circa about the same time frame as the previously marked People 70 and the other Hunter holster that you examined, correct?
Yes, the pre-mid-1980s.
So all three were from the same manufacturer,
Yes.
the same type of holster,
Yes.
the same model number,
Yes.
and all bore the powder horn logo indicating that the manufacture date was mid-1980s or so.
Or earlier, yes.
And you're aware, based on your the information that you were given when you analyzed these holsters, that all these holsters were recovered from Philip Spector's house, correct?
Yes.
Let's take a look at the ammunition, the other ammunition that was recovered from Mr. Spector's house. Did you perform any analysis on that additional loose ammunition?
Yes, I did.
All right. I want to talk first of all about the spear ammunition. Let's go to what's been previously marked as People's 81. This may assist us a little bit in talking about this ammo. Take a look at this document that's been previously marked as People's 81 for identification, and tell me if you recognize this photograph. I know it's a little bit hard to see. Sudi's going to enhance it a little bit. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
Or I should say the photograph and its contents.
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
I directed it to be taken, and I was present when it was taken.
Did you analyze all of the ammunition depicted in this photograph?
I did.
Specifically, there's a bright yellow line that goes straight down the middle of this exhibit. On the left, it appears to be labeled Spear. On the right, it appears to be labeled Smith & Wesson, or parentheses, S&W plus P. Can you describe what it is that the jurors are looking at left and right?
Yes, I can. I placed a yellow rod down the center of a piece of paper when we took this photograph, and we laid out the ammunition. On the left side of the bright yellow rod, that is all Spear brand ammunition. On the right side of the yellow rod is all Smith & Wesson plus P 38 Special brand ammunition. And it's further labeled with tags that indicate what item numbers it is involved with or it was taken from.
Can you make a determination when you analyze ammunition like this? Is there any significance to the weight of ammunition?
Well, there can be. Manufacturers, when they produce, say, 38 special caliber ammunition, might produce different bullet weights. Common bullet weights in this caliber are 110 grains, 125 grains, 158 grains. So, yes, there's some value in weighing ammunition or weighing bullets individually. It can provide information.
Is a grain a unit of measurement used to weigh ammunition?
Yes, and to give you some reference, there are 7,000 grains in 1 pound.
All right, so a grain is a standardized unit of measure. So if you say 110 grains, you're not talking about physical grains of gunpowder or projectile material or anything else. You're talking about a unit of measurement like a pound or whatever, liter. I guess a liter is a volume.
Well, yes, it's a unit of measure, it's a unit of weight, and it's the standard unit of weight that's used in the firearms and ammunition industry.
Okay. And I don't want to get bogged down into item numbers because we've got so many numbers running around this courtroom. I want to make sure that we can kind of stay on point. Looking at the Spear ammunition alone, were there your understanding is there were 3 different places where that Spear ammunition was recovered from Mr. Spector's house, and they were labeled as item 30, item 54, and item 55, just different containers where that ammunition was found loose, correct?
I just need to catch up with you for a moment.
Absolutely. 30, 54, and 55.
That is correct.
All right. And in item 30, there was 1 round found of Spear ammunition, correct?
Yes.
In item 54, there were 22 rounds, correct?
Correct.
And in item 55, and these item numbers are simply designations of, if there was a Ziploc baggie, for instance, that might be item 1, or item 22, or item 95, whatever. That's how those item numbers were given a designation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to get into the details too much about that, but item 55 had 11 rounds, is that right?
Yes, it did.
So if my math is correct, about 34 rounds of Spear ammunition, is that right?
Did you say 33?
I said 34, but I may be, my math is not that great.
34, I was mistaken.
Okay. So approximately your understanding is there was exactly 34 other rounds of Spear ammunition found in Mr. Spector's house, correct?
Yes.
Those were all the same brand, Spear, correct?
Yes, they were.
All right, same manufacturer, in other words?
Yes, the same marketer.
Okay.
The term I use.
And you said that you were able to test the weight or make a determination of the weight of this ammunition, correct?
Yes.
What was the weight of all this Spear ammunition?
Well, when we say weight of the ammunition, what I'm actually referring to is the weight of the bullet, because that's what a manufacturer would vary. And this ammunition contains 110 grain bullets.
And what about the Spear bullet, the Spear cartridge that was in the Colt Cobra? Did you glean a weight from that?
Yes, it also contained a 110 grain bullet.
So consistent in brand, caliber, manufacturer, vendor, and weight.
Yes.
All right. Let's change gears to the right side of the diagram for just a second and talk about the Smith & Wesson, the Plus P. Did you also analyze that ammunition?
Yes, I did.
And it looks like, Mr. Carroll, there are several expended cartridge cases as well as full cartridges there, correct?
Yes.
Why are there some expended cartridge cases? Describe that for us, please.
Well, when I initially received the ammunition that was reportedly recovered from the Spector residence, it was all live ammunition. But with the exception, of course, here of, I'm pointing to a fired cartridge case with next to a label item 1. That one was recovered in the Colt Cobra revolver. But the other ammunition, it was all live when I received it. When I was asked to do the powder pattern testing that we talked about earlier, in order for that test to be valid, I need to be using the same kind of ammunition that was involved in the shooting incident. And this Smith & Wesson ammunition is not common today, and it wasn't common in 2003. And I didn't have any exemplar or reference ammunition that was identical. So with permission, I consumed some of the recovered evidence ammunition in order to perform that kind of testing, because that was the same kind of ammunition.
All right, there were, you've talked a little bit about, hinted about the rarity of this particular ammunition. When you say you couldn't find that exact ammunition, what do you mean? Why would that Smith & Wesson Plus P be rare?
I conducted some research into this, and I learned from a variety of sources that in the early 1980s, around 1983 or 1984, Smith & Wesson stopped producing this. And I know from experience that ammunition is not something that usually sits on a gun store shelf for an extended amount of time. It's a high turnover type item. So I had some Smith & Wesson ammunition in my reference collection, although it was a little bit different. Very similar, but a little bit different, such that it wasn't suitable for my powder pattern testing. So I looked around into acquiring some Smith & Wesson ammunition, and I was not able to come up with a vendor where I could buy some to use. That's how uncommon it was in 2003.
Taking a look at what I'd like to have marked as people's next in order, I believe it's
124.
124. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Did you engage in a comparison of the Smith & Wesson Plus P ammunition or the cartridges? I guess the best way to ask it is just for comparison purposes.
Yes, I did.
All right, an analysis for comparison purposes. I should have asked the question a little more artfully. Are these photographs previously marked as people's 124, are these photographs indicating or highlighting part of your comparison?
Yes, they are.
Okay, explain what it is that we're looking at and what you were doing insofar as your comparison was concerned.
Is it possible to enlarge, say, photo A, because I can't quite see my labels?
You'd have to ask our technical advisor. I think she can do that.
No.
How about that?
Excellent.
What week is it?
So,
What day is it?
This was the
video
photograph
100.
that was labeled A in this display. What we have here on the right, this is one of the live cartridges, the Smith & Wesson Plus P cartridges found in the Colt Cobra revolver. The one on the left is a live Smith & Wesson 38 Special Plus P caliber cartridge. This is This is a cartridge recovered from what we call item 25, which is one of the revolvers on the table in front of me. What I was doing here, this is really was part of my case notes, just to help refresh my memory later. What we're looking at here is a side profile of the cartridges. They have the same head stamp, but I also wanted to illustrate, primarily for myself, that the profile of the bullet is the same. Some bullets might have a curved surface. This area here is called the ogive, O-G-I-V-E. This is a straight ogive. Excellent, that helps us see even better. We can also see that the jacket, that's this orange colored material, it's copper, it comes to the same height. Try to hold this as steady as I can. It comes to the same height on both of these. And then the rest of the nose of the bullet, which is lead, is also of the same height. Different manufacturers, even one manufacturer in different product lines, will use different types of bullets. And so I was just illustrating for myself that there are no discernible differences there.
And your analysis concluded with the fact that in fact these bullets, these cartridges rather, appear to be consistent with one another.
Yes, they are.
And the one on the left was taken out of item 25, which is the 357 that was recovered from Mr. Spector's house, correct?
Yes.
And the one on the right was taken out of the gun, the Colt Cobra.
Yes, correct.
People's next in order, and I think this will do it as far as additional exhibits are concerned.
125.
Thank you. This also is a photograph, I believe, of a head stamp, or the head stamps. Can you see that from where you are?
I can.
Do you recognize that photograph, what's depicted in it?
I do.
Describe what it is that we're looking at.
Well, we're using the same ammunition cartridges we saw in the last photo. I've just oriented them differently. We're looking down at the head stamp now. The one on the left was removed from the item 25 revolver, which is before us today. The one on the right is from the Colt Cobra revolver. And what I'm looking at here are the head stamps. They both read Smith & Wesson, or S&W, 38 Special plus P, through a series of abbreviations. And actually also of importance is there are two little dots, if you will. I can't see them from where I am, but there are two little dots on the cartridge cases.
We're trying to enhance that just a little bit for you. How about that?
That's excellent. Let's look at the one on the left. Just after the P, we see two little dots. And just before the number 3, we see two little dots. That's a code placed on that ammunition. You see, back when Smith & Wesson was making this ammunition, some of the cartridge cases were made by outside vendors. And that particular code, 2 dots and 2 dots, indicated that it came from a contractor called IVI. They made those cartridge cases for Smith & Wesson.
Were you able to determine a weight of these of the bullets?
Yes, I was.
All right. And what was the weight of the Smith & Wesson plus P bullets that were? I'm sorry. Yes, bullets. I get so confused about cartridges, cartridge casings, bullets. Let me start that again. What was because the bullets are what you weigh, correct? Not the full cartridge.
Well, sometimes to determine the bullet weight, I weigh the full cartridge and do some subtraction, but I'm interested in the bullet weight.
Okay, so let me use the right phraseology here. Did you determine the weight of the plus P bullets that were found in the Colt Cobra?
Yes, I did.
What was the weight?
125 grains.
Did you determine the weight of the additional ammunition that we've looked at previously, that was on the right side of that previous exhibit, the weight of that additional plus P ammunition?
Yes, that was also 125 grains.
So you compared the Smith & Wesson, the Smith & Wesson rounds, the plus P rounds that were found in the Colt Cobra with all the other Smith & Wesson rounds that were found in the defendant's house, correct?
Yes.
They were of the same brand?
Yes, they were.
They were of the same caliber?
Yes.
And that is 38 caliber plus P?
38 special caliber.
Sorry,
Yes.
38 special caliber. And they were plus P, correct?
They were.
The cartridge cases were all from the cartridge cases were all from the same contracted manufacturer,
Yes, they were.
and you could determine that from the dots.
Correct, it's a code.
All right, and that manufacturer was IVI.
Yes.
All the bullets were of the same shape as you've described to us,
Yes, they were.
the same style,
Yes.
the same design characteristics.
Yes.
They all weighed 125 grains.
Yes.
All the cartridge cases bore the same type of gunpowder.
Of those that were disassembled or fired,
Okay.
those that we saw live in that photograph, I didn't disassemble them.
But you did disassemble several others.
Yes.
An exemplar set, in other words, a random set you disassembled, correct?
Well, through firing them and collecting the gunpowder, I examined that gunpowder, and yes, it was the same type.
All right. You already indicated that Smith & Wesson plus P ammunition is relatively uncommon in the marketplace, correct?
Yes.
And it hasn't been manufactured since before 1984, is that right?
Correct.
So we've talked a long time about a lot of different things, about weapons, about holsters, about ammunition. And I want to ask you if you can summarize for us basically your findings and your expert opinion concerning this case.
That's objection, that's vague, summarize, you just said an hour and a half of testimony.
I tend to agree. If you want to be a little more specific, perhaps lead a bit as to where you're going. That's fine.
I absolutely will. That was simply a foundational question for my next series of questions.
All right, you may proceed.
All right, thank you. Your information was what was found in the defendant's house included the shotgun, the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun that was the high standard that's before us on council table, correct?
Yes.
There was a .357 revolver that was loaded with Smith & Wesson or S&W plus P ammunition that was weighed at 125 grains, correct?
Yes.
There was a .38 caliber revolver that was loaded with Smith & Wesson plus P ammunition that was weighed at 125 grains, correct?
Yes.
There was additional loose Smith & Wesson plus P ammunition found in different parts of the house, all weighed in at 125 grains from the same manufacturer, same design, style, and weight, correct?
Yes.
There was additional spear ammunition that was found loose in various parts of Mr. Spector's house that was of the same style, design, and weight, 110 grains, as the spear ammunition that was found in the Colt Cobra, correct?
Yes.
There was a Hunter holster, model 1100, that was a right-handed holster with a powder horn design, and that was one of the three that we've talked about, correct?
Yes.
There was a second Hunter holster, model 1100, same model number, also right-handed, also with the powder horn design that was found in Mr. Spector's house, correct?
Yes.
And according to the information that you have, both from the Sheriff's Department and the crime lab concerning where the actual bullet came from, the bullet that killed Lana Clarkson. She was killed with a .38 caliber revolver, a Colt Cobra, loaded with both Smith & Wesson plus P ammunition weighed at 125 grains, spear ammunition weighed at 110 grains, and that was found next to an empty Hunter holster, model 1100, with a powder horn design, correct?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
I know your budget's tight.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll, we met before, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you. You were testing this gun, you actually saw the gun, the .38 caliber Colt Cobra on February 4th, 2003, correct?
Yes, I did.
And between February 4th, 2003, and I think that last picture that was on the screen for People's 125 was February 23rd, 2007, correct?
I'm confused as to what picture you're referring to.
Last time you tested or looked at this gun was February 23rd, 2007, correct?
Well, I looked at it today.
Besides that,
I
we're
can
not
refer to
talking
some
about today.
reports. The last report that I issued that includes that revolver was dated March 16, 2007.
March 16, 2007. So you have been on and off testing either this gun or the cartridges found in this gun for a period of 4 years, over 4 years, correct?
Certainly on and off.
On and off 4 years. And with all the testing that you did on this gun as the firearms expert and all the descriptions in the summary that Mr. Jackson just gave you, did you put anywhere in your notes any conclusion as to who fired this gun on February 3rd, 2003?
I did not.
Now, I see that over here, if I can just see, because I have not seen them, that there's all this laid out. 3 guns, 1 holster, and 1 pump-action shotgun that Mr. Jackson laid out on no envelopes in front of this jury for this jury to see. You told us that you know where some of the ammunition was found. Do you know where in Mr. Spector's house the Smith & Wesson with the longer barrel was found?
All I know is it was found in the residence.
Did anyone tell you whether or not it was found upstairs at any time?
Someone may have told me that. I don't recall.
Do you know where this item was found?
Indicating
Indicating this one is 16.
It's item 26.
26, I apologize.
Item 26, not
Item
people's
26. Do you know where item 26 was found?
I just know it was in the Spector residence.
And for the record, Your Honor, I'm sorry, Ms. Bottom, that's People's 76 for identification.
People's 76 for identification. Do you know whether these guns were laid out together in the open for people to see in Mr. Spector's house?
I do not.
The shotgun that is in front of you, in front of this jury right now, did anyone tell you that the defense returned that shotgun to the state at any time?
That calls for hearsay.
It was
Sort of relevant.
was testified to.
I don't know what the relevancy would be. Sustained.
Do you know where this gun was found?
Indicating.
The shotgun.
Thank you.
Apologize.
And that's People's 77.
Okay.
I'm told it came from the Spector residence.
So you were told things about that shotgun, correct?
That's about all I know as far as what I was told, yes.
In what year did you first see that shotgun?
I believe 2007.
Now, when you first saw the .38 caliber Colt that was questioned to you by Mr. Jackson, that was on February 4th, correct?
Yes, that was the first time I saw it.
And you actually went to 1700 Grandview Avenue and saw that gun at, what, 13:42 hours, correct?
I can confirm that time.
Please, if you would.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And that gun was shown to you by Detective Katz?
Yes, that's correct.
Was he there with you, and did he take the gun out of the manila envelope that it came in?
I recall seeing it in a box, similar to the box we've had up here on the witness stand today. I don't recall an envelope.
Do you still have that box?
I do.
Can you just pull it up for a second? Okay. And does that box have a tie down inside it?
I don't see one in here now, and I want to clarify, I don't know if this was that box.
Okay.
I'm just saying it was a box like this box.
Like that. Did you see a manila envelope?
I don't recall.
Did he take the gun out for you, or did you take the gun out? On February 4th, 2003.
I don't recall. In fact, I don't remember us taking the gun out of the box. I think I just peered into the box, as far as I can recall.
Well, did you do notes? As a matter of fact, I complimented you on your notes that you had before we came into the courtroom, correct? Because they were so detailed.
That's
right?
what you said, yes.
That's right. And you have your notes of what's called the field investigation report?
Correct.
Right. If you looked at the field investigation report, would that help refresh your recollection as to what occurred on that day?
It may. I can read this section if you'd like.
Your Honor, may I have him refer to page 105 of his field investigation
Certainly.
reports? Thank you. Just read it to yourself if you could.
I've read it now.
Does that help refresh your recollection in any way as to whether or not that gun was being handled?
Yes, it does.
And how does it help you? Tell us.
Well,
What happened?
I indicated here now that I've read this over. Let me find the section. Actually, I'm sorry. I misread my own notes just a minute ago. It doesn't help me.
It does not help you.
No, it
So you
doesn't.
don't know. But you did learn on that day that the cylinder contained one empty cartridge case, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And that there were 5 other empty chambers, with other 5 chambers empty?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, you said that you just peered in. Did you see 5 chambers empty in the gun?
This was a long time ago. For me to have noted this, I would have seen that they were empty or unloaded. Now, I can sometimes examine that just without handling a firearm if it's just laying on a surface. If I look in the right areas, I can often tell.
So you don't know whether or not somebody was actually handling that gun, showing it to you, or whether you were handling that gun, correct?
Correct. I don't believe I was handling it, but my recollection is vague.
But you did learn that the 5 chambers were empty, correct?
Actually, for me to have noted that the way I did, I observed that they were empty.
Okay. And so that you had to have seen the gun out of the envelope.
Well, again, I'm not sure it was in an envelope. I just remember it being in a box.
Remember it being a box. And you don't know whether it was tied down, correct?
I don't.
And you don't know how many times it being handled between the time it was collected and the time it was sold February 4th, correct?
I have no idea.
And you have no idea whether people were wearing latex gloves or were they not wearing latex gloves, correct?
Are you referring to any handling that occurred out of my presence?
Correct.
Well, she asked, does he have
have any knowledge?
No, we know what the answer is going to be. Do you have any way of knowing?
No idea.
All right, here we go.
When was the next time you sold the gun that we're referring to?
Well, at various times I saw it in the custody of Lynn Harrell in the laboratory.
And do you know how many times you saw it in her custody in the laboratory?
Just a few times. I don't have an exact count.
How many times did you handle this gun until today, before you came to court today?
Well, I've handled it a number of times.
Do you know how many other people handled this gun before you handled it after February, or before you looked at it after February 4th, 2003?
Objection, Your Honor. Based on the court's previous ruling, we know what the answer to this is to speculation.
Well, no, because I believe the answer is not going to be speculation if I get the expected answer. Do you have any way of knowing how many people handle it?
I'm a little confused about the time frame I'm supposed to be
let me
answering for
rephrase
myself.
Okay.
Is there a chain of custody form kept in your lab to document how many times that gun, the Colt Cobra 38 that we're speaking about, is there a chain of custody form to document how many people handled it before you received it to do further test firing on it?
There is chain of custody, but it documents the custody of the firearm. It doesn't document who handled it on what date.
Okay, so what you're telling me, there's no way to reconstruct, as far as you know, how many people would have handled that document, just where that gun had handled the gun, just where it had been, correct?
Well, I know where the gun was. I can't tell you who may or may not have handled it and how often and how many times.
Right. You don't know whether or not it was ever removed from its manila envelope to be photographed before you got it, correct?
I don't know about anything that happened when it was not in my custody.
So when was the first time that the gun actually came into your custody?
If I may refer to my
Yes,
case.
please.
I received it on June 9, 2003.
Okay, and at the time you received it, the 5 live cartridges were taken out from the gun, correct?
Yes, they were not in the firearm.
All right, and when you received it, was it June 9th, did you say?
Correct, of 2003.
Did you know, or did you receive it from any particular person?
Yes, from Lynn Harold.
From Lynn Harold, okay. And when you received it on June 9th, the spent or fired cartridge case was still in the gun, correct?
To the best of my recollection, it was not in the firearm at that time.
Do you know where the other rounds of the cartridges were?
Which other ones are you referring
The
to?
ones that were not spent? Were they with the gun?
We've been talking about a lot of ammunition today. Are you referring?
The other 5 loaded rounds that you testified to?
They were with the firearm in a small coin-sized manila envelope.
Okay.
So, weird. Sorry about that. Sorry. Boop, boop, boop. Another pause on feel, for fuck's sake. Look at this bastard, dude. Look at this fucking bastard. The ghoul is loose.
Yeah. Did you testify before the grand jury in this matter?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And that was, do you recall the date that you testified before the grand jury?
I don't have any recollection.
Would
I
it be-
have records back in my office.
Okay, would it be around September 9, 2004?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you that precisely.
Does that sound about right?
I believe it was sometime in 2004.
Okay. And when you just said right now you believe that the cartridge, the expended cartridge case was separated from the gun?
To the best of my recollection.
Do you remember being asked the question in grand jury, and when the weapon itself, was it loaded or unloaded when it came to you? Answer, from the standpoint of live ammunition, it was unloaded. Question, was there anything inside of the cylinder of the weapon? Answer, yes, there was. Question, what was that? Answer, there was a fired cartridge case in one of the chambers in the revolver. Do you remember saying that? I'm sorry, page 488.
What I need to know is, are we talking about the time when I saw it on February 4th at the crime scene, or when I received it in the laboratory?
Let's go back to page 487. Perhaps if I showed you this, that would help refresh your recollection.
It might.
Judge, may I approach, please?
You may.
Thank you. I'm going to go to 487.
Got it. Thank you.
This count starts right here. Just read it to yourself.
This does refresh my memory a little bit.
Okay, thank you. And it would be fair to say that when you received this gun on June 9, 2003 for further testing, the expended cartridge was still in the cylinder?
Yes, according to my prior testimony, which was certainly nearer to the incident.
And do you know whether or not, when there was pictures shown to you of the gun, and you remember the picture with the 1 expended cartridge and the 5 fired cartridge, remember that?
With a firearm in the picture as
Yes.
well? I do remember.
Okay. Do you know when that picture was taken?
I probably can tell you, yes.
Yes, please.
Is it possible to see that picture? It would help me locate an answer for you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. exhibit number 66?
I believe that was taken this calendar year.
This calendar year.
Yes, February, I believe.
So when you instructed that this picture be taken, do you know whether or not the cartridge was still in the gun and had to be removed?
Oh, it was out at that time.
It was out at that time. Do you know who took it out?
It's difficult to say from recollection. However, if I received it with that cartridge in it, because of the analyses I did, I would have had to have removed it.
Did you know whether or not the cartridge had been removed prior to June 9, 2003 when you saw it?
I have information that leads me to believe, yes, it had.
So it had been removed prior to that and put back into the gun, correct?
Yes, if that's how I received it, that would have to have been the case.
That would have to be the case. And that was the information you had, correct? Now, when you came to the Alhambra on June 4, 2003, you came to fire an exemplar item, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and that was an exemplar Colt Cobra, and you came to fire it in a gun box, a fire box. What do you call that technically?
I call it an ammunition collector, but you could probably use all of those terms.
All those terms. And an ammunition collector. And when you got to the house of Mr. Spector on February 4, 2003, who was there?
If I can refer to my
Yes,
case
please.
notes. When I initially arrived, I believe people who I observed included Detectives Bean, B-I-E-H-N, Kerfoot, K-E-R-F-O-O-T, Detectives Lilienfeld and Katz, Chief Soderberg, myself, of course, and a colleague of mine, Ed Anderson, who was there to assist me with the testing I was going to do.
And your understanding was that you were going to participate in a sound test, correct?
Correct.
Calling out this man's cuff action.
All right. And did somebody
Well,
tell you what
sir.
the purpose of the sound test was going to be?
Objection, Madam Call for hearsay.
Just, no, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted, but only to indicate if any action was taken after that. So it's received for that purpose, and the
Thank you.
jury is so admonished.
I was aware of why I was there.
How were you aware of why you were there?
It was part of the request for my
was you aware
response.
that
I was
I was aware
contacted
that
by
you
a
were aware that I was
supervisor
aware that I was aware
who
that
asked
you
me to respond to that location at that time, and it was explained to me why I was going.
Well, why did you understand you were going?
Oh, I understood I was going to facilitate some sound testing. I was to provide a firearm and a means of collecting bullets, because we can't just be shooting firearms hither and thither in people's homes. So
Hither
I
and
brought a
thither.
device to gather the bullets, and
Hither and thither.
ammunition similar to what I was told had purportedly been used in the shooting incident. So I brought those things with me. I was going to test fire a firearm, and some sound engineers were going to be tongue-tied. We're
And
going to be
sorry.
making some sound measurements.
Okay. And some of the ammunition you bought was Smith & Wesson 110 grain, right?
I did bring that.
And 125 grain, right?
Yes.
And 158 grain, right?
Yeah, I brought all of those, yes.
And in fact, you shot off ammunition that had all those grains, correct?
Yes, I did.
Because for sound purposes, the amount of grains doesn't really matter, correct?
Actually, I didn't know if it would matter, and I didn't know what kind of ammunition was used in the shooting event. I just knew the brand, so I brought a variety because I'm not a sound engineer. I just wanted to bring everything I might need so I didn't have to make a second trip.
Okay, but in your notes, you indicate that you had 3 exemplar types, correct?
Yes.
And those were the 110, 125, and 158 grain, right?
Yes.
And then you actually shot off 3 shots of the 158 grain, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you fired off those 3 shots of the 158 grain, you said they were fired with the back to the door, and you put parens worst case scenario, close parens, correct?
Yes, I did.
What did you mean by worst case scenario?
In talking with sound engineer personnel who were there, as well as detectives, it was explained to me that the position of the shooter at the time of the shooting was, at that point, not known for certain. So we wanted to essentially put a barrier between the gun and the doorway, I call it the rear door of the foyer. So as to see what would happen if sound was perhaps blocked in that manner, as opposed to my back away from the door and the firearm closer to the door. So that's really based on information that was provided to me and what I was told we were going to do.
So somebody told you that they had identified a person who was a shooter, is that correct?
I don't know specifically what I was told. I was aware that a subject, Phil Spector, was involved in this incident.
Well, then what I'm trying to ask you then is, what do you mean worst case scenario?
Well,
I can ask the answer. Can you just explain that?
He may explain it. Go ahead.
I was told that a shot was fired in the foyer of the home, and the position of the shooter was unknown. The position of the victim was known. So I was asked to fire from two different positions, one with my back to the door, separating the gun and the door by using my body, and in another position with my body away from the door and nothing separating the firearm and the door. So those are the two, I should say, alternatives that were tried.
But when you just answered that question, sir, you said the position of the victim was known, correct?
Yes, I was told how the victim was found.
And you said the position of the shooter was unknown, correct?
It was unknown to me, and it wasn't relayed to me. Whether or not someone else actually knew, I don't know.
So you, in doing your test, made an assumption that the person who was deceased was not the shooter, isn't that correct?
I don't know whether I made that assumption or whether that was relayed to me.
That's certainly what was relayed to you, correct?
Well, one way or another, that thought entered my mind, but beyond that, I don't know that I can tell you exactly how it got there.
But that's what your thought was, correct?
Yes.
And sir, you have been involved in, I read your quite impressive resume with dealing with firearms for a very long time, correct?
Well, professionally for approximately 9 years.
And one of the things they tell you with firearms is that you shouldn't handle them when you drink alcohol, correct?
I know that's taught in some places. I certainly think that's good advice.
And something else that's taught is that you shouldn't handle them when you take drugs, correct?
I don't know that I've considered the use of drugs before, but that seems to make sense.
And certainly you shouldn't handle a gun if you have both alcohol and drugs on board, correct? That would be good safety practice, correct?
It sounds like a good idea to me.
Because you're aware from your years of experience that accidents can happen with guns, correct?
They can and have happened, yes.
And people who have accidents with guns can do it when they're under the influence of alcohol, correct?
I know of some accidents that have occurred that way.
And influence of drugs, correct?
Yeah, I'm sure that can happen.
All right. And you know that people have even shot themselves under the influence of accidents, under the influence of drugs or alcohol with guns, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. It sounds like it's going to be on the foundation of this witness.
It's really becoming argumentative is what it's becoming. It's far beyond the scope of what this witness testified to on direct, so sustained.
Now, with regard to the ammunition in this gun, this is a 2-inch barrel, correct?
Yes.
And when Mr. Jackson was asking you for the position of the barrel in relation to the target, you indicated about 2 inches. Do I have that correct?
Well, based on the powder patterns alone, with a mouth of my size fully open, the firearm could not have been more than 2 inches out of the mouth. But I relied on other information as well that actually gives me a more, what I call more precise location.
And when you said the gun, the barrel of the gun was in the mouth, correct?
Yes, relying on that other information, correct.
And when you testified before the grand jury in this matter, were you asked the question, page 520, counsel?
This is improper impeachment.
I don't know what that, I don't have the grand jury transcripts. I'd have to take a look at it.
Reading.
Well, let me ask you this, sir.
I'm sorry.
Did you ever state to anyone that the barrel of the gun was all the way in the mouth of Lana Clarkson?
I very well could have said that.
Did you state that to the grand jury?
I don't recall.
Your Honor, may I approach again?
Yes.
Sorry, Ms. Bowman.
520, Counsel Spade. Ms. Carroll, I'm just going to give you 519 on so that you can answer this question.
Well, that wasn't my statement. I agree with that statement in its totality, but you just read a small portion of it.
Okay. And, well, let's go back then. You agree with the statement in its totality that the muzzle of that gun being all the way in the victim's mouth, with the sight past the front teeth into the throat, the weapon being fired, the recoil and the muzzle flipping the weapon back, that sight blade catching those two front teeth from the backside and then flipping them of the mouth and across the room, correct?
Yes, that is correct, but we need to keep in mind when I say all the way in the mouth, I mean past the plane of the lips.
Okay.
I'm not referring to any, when I say all the way in, I'm not referring to any specific depth, just that we are beyond the lips.
Okay.
And in fact, the front sight blade was beyond the front teeth.
All right. And that's clear to you, no doubt about that.
I don't have any doubt about that.
Okay. Now, with regard to this gun, when the bullet is fired from the primer exerts pressure, correct?
Doing this?
There is a certain amount of pressure generated when the primer's fired.
Well, how much pressure
The primer itself? Oh,
to get that bullet to come out of the gun?
Well, that's not the main propulsion of the bullet. That's only a
What is
almost
the
an
muzzle?
insignificant amount.
I apologize. What is the muzzle pressure out of a muzzle of a gun,
being so
generically,
rude
of a
about something I know
revolver such as a
nothing
38
about.
caliber?
That's highly dependent on the ammunition being used, the gun itself. That's a very general question I can't address.
Did you do any specific testing on this gun with this plus P ammunition to determine what the velocity was of this bullet coming out of the gun?
The velocity, I did not.
It'd be pretty great, though, wouldn't it?
I don't know. Great might mean something different to you and me.
1,200 feet per square second sound about right?
Oh, per square second.
Per second, I'm sorry.
Well, with this specification of ammunition that we're talking about, that's on the high side. It would be lower than that.
Well, how much lower?
Oh, we're talking in perhaps the sub 1,000 feet per second
talking to
range.
him like she's like, I've got you, and she literally, clearly has no clue what she's talking about. She's just done a little bit of research or some research, and is passing it off, and she keeps misspeaking, and he's just like, what? Like, but she keeps doing it. Have some respect
So
for
this is what you're saying to me.
Even if you have a point, like, you look like an asshole.
Maybe a little under 1,000 feet per second is how fast this bullet could travel, correct?
Get it in, yeah.
Yes, and again, I'm speaking in very general terms. I didn't test this particular gun ammunition combination.
You can calculate, as you know, because you're a gun examiner expert, the pressure that comes out of this particular gun, correct?
Some people can, I cannot.
When Lynn Harold bought you this gun for you to look at on the several times you testified she delivered it to you, did she ever ask you to tell her about the gases that come out of this gun when it's fired?
I'm sure she asked me where they exit the firearm. I'm sure we discussed, in general terms, those issues.
Did you ever give her information about the pounds per square inch of the gases that come out of this gun?
I did not.
Did she ever ask you about how much?
Excuse me, before you ask your next question, I need to get an estimate on time.
I'm going to be a little bit longer.
All right, then we're going to go ahead and take our recess. We'll reconvene at 9:30 on Monday morning.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition. Council, remember, you're due back at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, okay? Thank you very much.
So where are we going next? Uh-oh, Dizzy. I think he wouldn't want her to, I know that she's been on Bob's and her and Bob have done something. Maybe, I mean, if she's cool, if she can take my live general real reactions in real life, there'd be no reason to do that. But watching in the past, is something completely different. I mean, I'm going to give my real opinion on her, though, so I don't know how she would take it. I don't know how her ego could handle that. We all have egos, but, people in that position usually don't like to have some regular person on here like me criticizing them. Oh, damn, Dizzy co-produces her YouTube. See, I know, and I'm friends with so many people in this sphere that like and don't like each other. Like, that's not even a weird thing, honestly. But no, she seems cool. She's my favorite defense attorney that they got, actually. But she was coming off like a real asshole there, and that's definitely true. Everyone hanging and banging this morning, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hanging and banging.
We're not fucking around. And yeah, we still have a wheel going, and we're going to go for just a little bit longer. I want to see how long this video is, actually. We just transitioned to part 3 with James Carroll. Criminalist continues, an hour 28. That should be about perfect into one. We'll keep doing that, yeah. And we are again working on a coffee mug we're giving away. If we don't do it, we don't finish it up right now, we'll go into Tuesday. 2, 3, 4, 5. We're 7 away, ladies and gentlemen. 7 away from another wheel spin. Let's keep going.
All right, on the record, the defendant's present with his counsel, the district attorneys are present, the jurors and the alternates are not. There's some motions filed this morning that I've read and considered that I understand you want to be heard on first, and that would be...
I did do one, hold on.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Best
There's a motion to quash the search warrant. Do you want to be heard?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor.
I read and considered it.
Oh, I was going to say that we just dropped it on the phone.
And I want to watch that. We're so far away. I probably might just go into that next. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I like to do the voting system too, but I'm into the Menendez story currently, and I don't know shit about it except for what Netflix is telling me, so I'm going to have to do more research.
This morning I wanted to give it.
That's true. We haven't even read that yet. We were reading the other motion yet. We are not prepared.
Okay, let's put it off.
I was just going to say, I told them that it was coming. I just dropped it on them this morning, and they certainly should have an opportunity to review it and respond, and I have no problem with that.
It's fine. Your other motion is basically just in writing what you've already argued last week, which is a motion to dismiss for outrageous government conduct and improper infiltration of the defense camp, though you do formally ask for a hearing, which I'm happy to do.
That's what we're asking.
Okay.
And we're not asking to have it heard today. We can have it heard at everybody's meeting.
Okay. We'll schedule it. We'll talk to the parties, and we'll set a hearing for that.
Good to go.
I understand Mr. Nestor had to run down to the business. Oh, there. Hello.
We
Yes.
do have one other evidentiary
Yes.
matter which I'd like to approach the bench with Mr. Dixon. Mr.
All right. That's fine. Oh, I know. That's not going to be an issue, but I think we have to do this part this afternoon. We have to, because you want to go
That's
up
why
on
this is
appeal.
gonna be so long.
And I think the findings have to be made. We've got a trial going on. That's my problem. It has nothing to do with everything the court said last week is still in effect as to timing and stays and all
Jen,
that.
thank you so much coming in here, hanging out, baby. Huh? Not messing around. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and a start to the week, and I will talk to you and see you, probably Tuesday night. Thank you, Jersey Jen. Love you.
It won't, tomorrow we're not going to
Amazing
do
work.
anything. I mean, I think we need to get this done this afternoon. It takes about 15 minutes. Well, no, because there's a lot of formalities that have to be followed. You'll be glad to know.
I will be here at 1:30.
Yeah, 1:30. If every I isn't dotted, every T isn't crossed, they're basically invalid. It's one of the big reasons for lots of the judges don't even want to get near a contempt, because they're almost impossible to do right, quite candidly.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll see you at 1:30 this afternoon. Just so that everyone is aware of what has happened at this point, we have had by agreement, an informal off-the-record discussion to see if this issue could be resolved. It was done informally, I think, to encourage frankness. It was frank. A stipulation has been offered but not accepted that I think would have resolved the problem, but that's the right of the parties,
Last week he was thinking about throwing her in jail.
not the court. And unless something changes between now and 1:30, the contempt proceeding will proceed at 1:30 this afternoon. So that's where we're at, and I want to get to the jury, and we'll go ahead and proceed with the jury at this point and resume with this at 1:30. All
So
right,
that's
let's bring
coming
in the
back.
jurors.
That may be Tuesday. So we're going to continue with James Carroll, I'm imagining.
All right, the record will reflect that all the parties, jurors, alternates, and the witness
Maybe I have to
previously
look forward
sworn and
to.
still
Yeah,
under
okay, so
oath
we're going to
are
continue with this, and then we have her. Oh, God.
present, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Kathleen?
Good morning, Mr. Carroll. When we left off on Thursday, we were talking about the guns that had been displayed by the prosecution on the table. The shotgun that you discussed with this jury, that was called a riot gun.
Well, it's a high standard brand shotgun. I suppose you could
Did you
call
use
it
the
that.
term? I'm sorry, I apologize, go ahead.
I did not use that term when I
Okay.
described it.
Did you look to see whether or not the manufacturer labeled it a riot gun?
If I could refer
Yes,
to my
please.
case notes, I can tell you that.
Riot gun?
The manufacturer did use that terminology. It's stamped on the barrel of the shotgun.
Okay. And a riot gun is essentially a gun that's utilized by police?
Well, riot gun isn't really a technically defined term. In a casual sense, I've heard it used in a variety of contexts. That could be one of them.
And that could be one of them. All right. Did you test that gun for operability?
I did not.
Okay. Did you test the other two guns that were not the death gun number 67 for operability?
I just want to make sure you're referring to the two revolvers we discussed.
The two revolvers besides the weapon, the gun that killed Lana Clarkson?
No, I did not.
Okay. So technically you don't know whether they can fire, correct?
Well, I did a visual examination. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary or unusual. I'm very familiar with the design of those revolvers, so unless there's some internal problem, I don't see anything that would prevent them from functioning.
But you did test the gun that killed her for operability, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you did not test those three guns that were laid out there, correct?
I did not do the same level of examination, correct?
Okay. Now, the ammunition that you discussed, the plus P ammunition, that's ammunition that's loaded to higher pressures, correct?
Well, plus P is a specification for a slightly increased pressure.
Okay. And did you testify before the grand jury that it was loaded to higher pressures?
Yes, higher or increased pressure.
Okay.
I did.
And as a result of the higher pressures, it's subject to greater velocity, the cartridge, when it leaves the gun, the bullet when it leaves the gun, correct?
Yes, that's the intent behind the increased pressure, is to increase velocity.
And in very simple terms, that means the bullet moves faster when it's fired, correct?
Correct.
What is the
if there's
general
anything to snack
pressure,
on before
pounds per square inch, that comes out of a .38 caliber revolver that you utilize in the industry when you're discussing these guns?
Well,
Object, that's vague and it's an improper hypothetical or assumes facts not evidence.
Well, do you feel you can answer the question?
I need to be narrowed down.
Okay, then the objection is sustained as overbroad.
What, in your industry, you are aware that weapons generically or guns generically have a certain type of pounds per square inch of pressure for bullets to come out of them, correct? When bullets come out of them.
Well, there are maximum pressure specifications, but those, when a cartridge is fired, the pressure in the cartridge and in the firearm starts out as atmospheric pressure, the same as the surrounding air. The pressure rises, it hits some peak, and then it falls and ultimately returns back to atmospheric pressure. So it depends on what instant in time we're referring to, but the pressure does change, it does increase, and then it decreases.
And there is a maximum pressure that you can calculate from standards that are developed by a group called SAAMI, S-A-A-M-I.
They're not calculated, they're measured, and they do have certain outer limits in their specification. They have maximum pressure specifications, things like that.
And in your industry then, for a .38 caliber revolver, when you're talking about them, what is the maximum pressure specification?
The maximum pressure specification, I need to actually define what that is. It's referred to as the maximum peak chamber pressure. And that's the pressure at one instant in time. It's the pressure inside the firearm as the powder is burning and propelling the bullet. It's important to understand that that pressure is not the same as the pressure surrounding the firearm or outside the firearm, or even as the bullet is exiting the firearm. But there is a maximum peak chamber pressure.
And what is the generic maximum peak chamber pressure that you understand a .38 caliber revolver to have?
For a standard .38 special caliber, the maximum peak chamber pressure in the chamber of the firearm is 17,000 pounds per square inch.
Okay. And this gun that you were looking at, the Colt Cobra, the death weapon, that has a 2-inch barrel, correct?
It does.
Okay. And the pressure inside that 2-inch barrel, is the ability for the pressure to be standardized inside that 2-inch barrel is less? Let me ask you a different way. All right. The barrel is 2 inches, correct?
Yes, the barrel is.
In a 4-inch .38 caliber revolver, does the pressure dissipate more in a 4-inch caliber revolver generically than a 2-inch inside the barrel?
Unfortunately, that when you say dissipate, I need you to be a little more specific.
Become reduced as the bullet travels down the barrel.
I can't actually answer that question because we need to know specifically what kind of ammunition we're talking about, and specific testing can be done to determine what's referred to as the pressure curve. We can determine what the pressure curve looks like. The pressure curve is just a graphic illustration or graphical illustration of starting at atmospheric pressure, the increase, and then the decrease in pressure. So there is no generic answer to that question. We have to be very specific, and we have to look at pressure curves.
And you did not test this gun with this ammunition plus P ammunition for that pressure curve, did you?
I don't have the capabilities of doing that.
Did anyone ask you from the Sheriff's Department to make arrangements to have this gun tested to see what the pressure was that would come out of the barrel the time the bullet left the barrel in this gun?
I'm going to object this vague. Once again, as phrased, come out of the barrel is too vague. He's talked about chamber pressure versus ambient outside pressure. I don't know what come out of the barrel means.
Let's ask the witness. Do you know what it means?
I'm a little confused myself here.
The objection is sustained.
All right. Did anyone ask you to test this plus P ammunition to see what the pressure was inside the barrel?
No one asked me that.
Did anyone ask you to test this plus P ammunition to see what the pressure was once the bullet left the barrel and is in midair?
Again, Your Honor, I would object this vague. Where? The pressure outside the gun or the pressure in the chamber?
Are you able to answer?
Well, would it be possible to repeat the question?
Sure.
Let me try to evaluate it again.
Okay. Did anyone ask you to test this gun with the plus P ammunition in it to see what the pressure was of the cartridge or the bullet when it left the barrel?
No, I can't answer that.
All right.
Okay. Did anyone ask you to test the pressure of the plus P ammunition outside the barrel at any point in terms of when it's suspended in air?
Did you say the pressure of the barrel?
No, of the plus P ammunition.
Well, once the bullet has left the barrel and is flying down range, no one needs to ask me because I know that it's the same as atmospheric pressure.
Which is?
Well, it depends on your elevation relative to sea level, but it's the same pressure as wherever you are.
Okay. Did you determine what that pressure was at 1700 Grandview Avenue? Ever?
Determine atmospheric pressure?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Okay. Did anyone from the Sheriff's Lab discuss that with you?
I can't say that I recall any such discussion.
Now, when we were discussing the Colt Cobra, the 38 Special, Mr. Jackson was up here and he talked to you about indexing a finger on the gun. Remember that discussion?
I do.
And that's so when you are about to shoot a gun, you don't put your finger on the trigger, correct? Until you're ready to actually shoot a gun, correct?
Well, that was the context in which Mr. Jackson was asking that question.
Well, that's what I'm asking you about, that same area of questions, okay? And when you go to a gun range with a gun, you don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to pull that hammer back. Or do you pull the hammer back first?
That depends on the mode in which I intend to fire the firearm.
Okay, so if you intend to fire the firearm in a single action mode, what would you do first?
I want to be sure that you're asking me specifically. There may be slightly different schools of thought.
You specifically.
Well, for me specifically, my finger doesn't touch the trigger until I am intending to pull it. So if I'm going to fire in single action mode, my finger will remain off the trigger while I'm cocking the hammer. It would be very dangerous to have my finger on the trigger at that point. So it would remain off the trigger until the hammer's cocked, and off the trigger until I make the mental intention of pulling the trigger.
And it's very dangerous to keep your finger on the trigger because as you begin to pull that hammer back, you could actually, by retarding the trigger, cause the gun to go off, correct?
It's not just retarding the trigger, because as you're cocking the hammer, the trigger's being mechanically moved to the rear by the internal mechanism of the firearm. But if your finger is on the trigger, it is possible you would pull the trigger fully to the rear, which could cause the firearm to fire.
Okay. And that's why it's very dangerous, correct?
Well, I would consider it dangerous to have your finger on the trigger unless you're intending to fire.
Okay. Now, when we were discussing this ammunition on Thursday, we also discussed the target distance here. You were doing some testing regarding target distances, correct?
I was doing testing regarding gunpowder patterns at various distances.
Okay. And that was to determine the barrel to target distance, correct?
No.
What was that for?
I was doing that testing to try to account for embedded gunpowder particles in the decedent's hard and soft palate, and yet an absence of stippling on the outside of her, what I would call her lips or face. So I was trying to determine at what distance the firearm could possibly have been for those conditions to exist.
Okay. And before you actually did that testing, we discussed that you went to Grandview on February 4th to do other testing regarding sound testing, correct?
That is correct.
And in that situation, on February 4th, you actually shot from an exemplar Colt Cobra about 19 rounds, correct?
I can tell you the quantity. It's 21 total.
21 total. Several of them were to adjust the sound equipment, right?
I need to refer to my
Please,
case.
absolutely.
This was a long time ago. Well, I keep track of my shots in order, chronological order. The first 4 shots were to allow the sound engineer to do whatever, I'm not a sound engineer, but it was to allow the sound engineer to do whatever adjusting or calibration was necessary.
And that for that you used 110 grain ammunition, P plus P, right?
Well, just a moment. It was 110 grain, it's not a plus P.
It was not a plus P. Okay. Just 110 grain, 38 ammunition, correct?
Smith & Wesson brand, semi-jacketed hollow point, 110 grain.
Okay. And then you did 6 more shots, right?
I did many more there.
Well, let's go.
I did 6 subsequently.
Let's do in line. First you did 3 to test, correct?
Well, no, I did 4 to adjust the
4
sound
to test,
equipment.
correct? And then in terms of subsequent shots, the next thing in your notes is that you did 6 shots, correct?
Correct.
And you used 110 grain ammunition, not plus P, right?
That is correct.
Now you said that 3 were in the line of sight, if I recall your testimony Thursday, correct?
Oh, I don't know if I said that on Thursday.
Well, was that true?
It is true, yes.
Okay. And when you say in the line of sight, where were you standing in the foyer area in relation to the chair or the location of where the chair that Ms. Clarkson had been sitting in is?
I was in the center of the foyer, approximately, and I was facing the rear door, the door to the driveway fountain area at the residence. So the chair wasn't there anymore, but the chair would have been to my left.
And did you measure from the imprints in the rug how far away the chair would have been from those 3 shots when you said you did them with the line of sight?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
Did you measure how far you were away for that test of those 3 shots from the chair where Ms. Clarkson would have been sitting?
I did not measure.
Okay. Do you remember how far you were away?
It was a few feet, 2 or more feet. There were some photographs taken. If I reviewed those, it might help me come up with a more precise number.
Okay. Now, when you say line of sight, what did that actually mean as opposed to when you tested for your back to the door?
Well, after consulting with the sound engineer, and again, sound is not something I regularly study, but after consulting with the sound engineer, we wanted to consider 2 possibilities. One of which where there was nothing separating the noise, which is the source of the noise, the firearm, from the door and subsequently outside. And so that's one scenario where there was nothing impeding the propagation of the noise. We wanted to consider a second possibility, and that is where there was something, a human body, impeding the propagation of the noise. So line of sight means my body was out of the way. And when I indicated in my notes back to door, that means I placed my body between the firearm and the door.
You placed your body between the firearm and the door, which means you were holding the firearm to shoot it into the sound equipment?
Oh, I didn't shoot any sound equipment.
I'm sorry, into the box.
Yes, I used a bullet collecting device.
Right. Into the box, correct? You were holding the gun into the box with your back towards the door, correct?
The gun was not in the box, it was pointed at the box with my back to the door.
To the door. And when you were in the line of sight,
He's 67 here?
then did you say that you were maybe in front of the box?
I don't know what you mean by, I don't think the box I use has any area I call the front or the back, so.
Well, did you turn and come around the box so that the box was between you and the door?
Yes, well, the box is I don't know, I believe it's 14 by 14 inches. The opening is 14 by 14 inches and it's a couple feet tall when I stand it on end. That's how it was arranged. It was simply setting on the floor. So with my back to the door, well, my back was to the door. When I did the line of sight shots, I essentially moved myself 180 degrees to the other side of the box.
So that's what I'm asking you. So if this was the door, back here, just generically, we're talking, this is your box. For the back of the door, you're in...
Jackson's like, I don't like her behind me, but...
In this position, correct? Shooting into the box.
Yes, I mean, the spatial relationship's a little different, but...
I understand that. I'm just trying to get an idea of what back to the door and line of sight means. This way, correct?
That's back to the door.
Okay, and then when you wanted to go into line of sight, you came out, assumed your target was here, the door there, and shot, correct?
I wasn't making any assumptions about a target. I was facilitating sound testing. So in one instance, my body was between the source of the noise and the door. In the other, my body was not in between.
Okay. Had you talked to the detectives about where Miss Clarkson was found in that foyer?
Yes.
And what was your understanding at the time you did this sound test and fired those specific 6 shots as to where she had been found?
It was my understanding she was in a chair, which was no longer present at the time I was there, and that, I'm trying to orient myself, I believe it would be the east wall. The chair was up against the east wall. She was in that chair, in the foyer.
And in fact, the box that you had placed would have been in front of the location of where the chair had been, correct?
Yes, a certain distance in front, correct.
Okay. Now, you then did 6 more shots with 125 grain ammunition, utilizing that same 3 back to the door, 3 line of sight, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Do you have in your notes that you did 6 shots with 125 grain plus P ammunition, 3 line of sight, 3 back to the door?
That does appear in my notes, but you're missing something in between.
Okay, what did I miss?
Well, during the initial 6 shots with 110 grain ammunition, according to the sound engineer, his equipment malfunctioned on 2 of those shots. So 2 of them had to be repeated. So there were actually a total of 8 because whatever recording equipment he used failed to record on a couple of those.
Well, actually, Mr. Carroll is going to get to that after we finish your actual testing to see what malfunctioned. But since you've gone there, let's go there now. 2 shots when you did the initial testing had to be repeated when the sound equipment didn't capture the total of 8 shots, correct?
You threw in a total of 8 shots at the end of your question. There were 8 shots. We were trying to record 6, 3 back to door, 3 line of sight, but somewhere in there was a malfunction, so I had to repeat 2 of the shots.
So you did 8 shots in that second test, 2 of which the sound equipment didn't record, correct?
Correct.
So 6 plus 2 is 8, correct?
Last time I checked.
Okay. So after you did those 8 shots, then you did the 6 shots with 125 grain plus P ammunition, you did 3 further shots, correct?
You're saying after the 125 grain?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and the 3 shots that you did there were fired all with your back to the door, correct?
Yes.
And that's at that point you put in worst case scenario, right?
Correct. Worst case from the standpoint of the propagation of sound. I put a barrier between the source of the noise and the door.
Okay, so at the time you did this sound test, correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't understand or know where the shooter of the gun, the person who shot the gun, was actually located, correct?
Correct, and I wasn't too concerned about that at that point.
I'm not asking you whether you were concerned, I'm just asking you whether or not you knew where the shooter was actually located.
I did not.
Now, along with the trying to determine go with the sound test to determine the sound test, you also testified on Thursday that you were trying to get a muzzle to target distance answer, correct?
Not at the scene on that day.
Not at the scene, but subsequently, right?
Yes, in a later analysis.
And in fact, would it be fair to say that all the testing you did with regard to the sound test would also aid you in determining a muzzle to distance, or would that not be true?
The sound testing?
Correct.
The sound testing wasn't for me. I just facilitated it.
Okay, you just facilitated that for the detectives, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the detectives that were there were whom?
There were a variety of detectives. I specifically call Detectives Lilienfeld and Katz, Detectives Bean, B-I-E-H-N, and Kerfoot, K-E-R-F-O-O-T, and I remember Chief Soderberg, who was the Chief of Detective Division at that time.
Okay. Now, later on, when you had to test the gun again for the muzzle to target distance, you met with certain people from the Sheriff's Department before you did that testing, correct?
Well, I don't recall. Do you mean an in-person meeting?
An individual. Well, let me ask you directly.
I meet with a lot of individuals, so maybe you can be a little more specific.
Did you meet with Dr. Lynn Harold at any point?
Oh, absolutely. We work in the same building. I see her on a regular basis.
Okay. And did you meet with her prior to doing your muzzle to target distance testing?
Well, yes, of course.
Okay.
We work in the same place.
Okay. And in fact, when you met with her, you had to discuss with her what it is that she wanted you to do and what testing you could do to answer certain questions, right?
It wasn't so much what she wanted me to do. I met with her to discuss circumstances of the case. She specializes in a different thing than I specialize in, so I was gathering some information from her that would aid me in setting up a valid test.
Okay, and it's important to gather that information from whoever, in this case, Dr. Harold, so that you could develop a test to try to answer the questions that are being posed of you, correct?
Yeah, I often have to consult with other specialists in a variety of types of analyses.
And what they tell you, you use or you accept to use as a basic premise in your testing, correct?
Well, that would depend on the circumstances. I try to gather information that will assist me. So, as I mentioned, it often requires consultation with people who specialize in certain issues or certain areas.
And that information you get may or may not be true, but you accept it for the limited purpose of developing a forensic test, correct?
Well, I don't blindly accept anything. I mean, I scrutinize everything that I receive, and I rely on the best information I have at the time and make the best decisions I can based on what I know at the time.
Did some of the things Dr. Harold tell you, were some of the things important for you to develop a test that would answer the muzzle to target distance determination in this case?
Actually, nothing that Dr. Harold told me affected the way I did my test or the ultimate conclusion I reached.
Did it affect the question that you formulated to answer?
I'm sorry?
Did it affect the forensic question that you formulated to answer?
Well, the ultimate question came from investigators. So the question was there.
Well,
and then I'm in the business of applying scientific principles to try to answer questions.
I apologize. What was the ultimate question that you were attempting to answer?
The question was, well, very simply, where was the firearm relative to Ms. Clarkson?
Okay. And you were still trying to answer that question through what part of 2003?
Do you mean a time frame?
Time frame.
Well, if I can refer to my case notes, I'll...
Absolutely. Anytime you need to refer to your case notes, just let us do and please do. We want you to be accurate.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of pages of case notes. Well, with regards to my powder pattern testing, I began addressing the issue on June 25, 2003. And I completed or concluded my analysis or my analytical work on, looks like July 2nd, 2003.
Okay. And it was your understanding through July 2nd, 2003, that you were the only person trying to determine from a ballistics point of view where the gun barrel was in relation to Ms. Clarkson's face, correct? When it went off.
Well, when you say ballistics point of view, I don't know what that means, but from the standpoint of doing these powder pattern testings, or these powder pattern testings, grammatically not correct, this testing, I was the person trying to do this.
You were the ballistics person trying to do this, correct?
Yeah, ballistics is being used improperly in that question.
Well, you don't know of anyone else who was trying to make this determination from your department, correct?
Again, with regards to the powder pattern issue, it was just me, as far as I know.
That's what I'm asking you. You don't know of anybody else, it was just you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And one of the questions that you asked yourself, one of the forensic questions, was how did the powder get into the wound without stippling on the face, correct?
That was the question, yes.
All right. And how did you know that there was just not stippling on Lana Clarkson's face? Did someone tell you that, or did you make that determination independently?
Oh, I don't make those determinations. That information ultimately came from the coroner's office.
Okay. And it was important for you to get that information for you to do the test, correct? For you to answer the question in the test, right?
I had to know that, yes.
All right. And you also had to know that there was powder inside the wound in the back of her throat, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And why did you need to know that?
Well, because those were the parameters that I was trying to work with. So in order for my test to have any meaning at all, I need to know those things. The issue that I was addressing is answering the following question. How did gunpowder particles get embedded in the decedent's throat, which tells me the shots fired at a fairly close distance, yet there was no stippling present on her face? And those are the issues I had to wrestle with, and that was my ultimate question. So obviously I needed that information.
And in your notes, you actually drew a diagram when you did your forensic question, correct?
I did. It's very childlike, but yes, I did.
Okay.
I did the best I could.
Your Honor, could we have this marked next in order?
Sextuple P.
I'm sorry, again?
Sextuple P. P.
And this has been marked P to the 6, basically. This is the diagram you drew, taken out of your notes, correct?
Yes, that is my diagram.
And in this diagram, you show the barrel of the gun outside the person being shot, correct?
In that diagram, as I'm thinking about the question, and that's what, you're at a portion of my notes where I'm just thinking on paper, if you will. Yes, that's something I was considering.
Well, did you ever draw a diagram show it before you did your muzzle to distance determination showing the barrel of the gun inside the mouth?
No, I didn't need any more diagrams. I kind of got it out on paper at that point.
Okay. And had anyone through July of 2003, had anyone from the coroner's office told you before you did your muzzle to distance, muzzle to target determinations that there had been a determination made that the barrel of the gun was inside the mouth?
No, I don't believe so, because otherwise there would have been no need for me to do this testing.
Okay. And I assume the same would be true of somebody else from the sheriff's department. No one told you that there was a determination made that the barrel of the gun was inside the mouth as of July 2003, correct?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
They eat a son of a bitch. Snuck up on me. Every damn time.
No.
Okay. Now, in fact, one of the things that that you did was take additional shots, did additional testing. Did you do it with the actual death weapon for this? Or did you do it with an exemplar gun?
I did a lot of shots, and you say additional shots. Can you be a little more specific?
Additional shots to facilitate your muzzle to target determinations.
When you say additional, I mean, I fire one shot at a time, so where do we break that off and then the rest is additional?
Well, let me ask you, because you're the one who did it. How many shots did you fire in order, total shots, in order to make a final determination on muzzle to target distance?
Let me see if I can count them up for you.
Okay.
If my math is correct, it's 28.
Okay. Now, during the time period that you were determining the muzzle to target distance, during the time period that you first discussed this case in February 2003 to July of 2003, did you have several meetings with Dr. Harold from the Sheriff's Department about this case?
I'm sure we met a number of times.
Okay. And as a matter of fact, on April 11, 2003, did you discuss with her the possibility that a material from the bullet was shaved off the bullet?
Let me take a look. Can you tell me the date again, please?
April 11, 2003.
Okay, I did meet with her on that date.
Okay. Did you discuss the possibility that there had been material shaven off the bullet as it jumped out of the cylinder gap? Before it jumped out of the cylinder gap?
We discussed that concept.
Now, when you say you discussed that you had from the coroner's office 3 fragments, correct? What you called C1, C2, and C3?
Well, not 3 fragments. I had 3 envelopes. They contain different numbers of fragments.
Okay. And C2 had a small lead fragment, correct?
C2 had 2 small fragments.
Okay. And did C3 have 2 or 1 fragment?
1.
Okay. And when you said C2 had 2 fragments, did you ever discuss with Dr. Sherry from the coroner's office only one of the fragments in C2?
I know I was involved in a meeting where Dr. Sherry was present. I don't recall at that level of detail what we discussed.
Okay. And would referring to your notes help refresh your recollection?
I don't know. I'm happy to try.
Okay. Could you look at, and I don't have a date on this note, perhaps, Your Honor, if I could approach?
Sure.
I don't have a date on these. It starts here. I don't think it goes here.
Okay.
I have copies.
Okay, thank you. That'll help me get to the right place.
Field shot.
Reviewing my notes refreshes my memory that I met with a variety of people, including Dr. Sherry.
And that, I apologize, I was just going to set a time frame for that meeting.
Oh, that meeting was August 14, 2003. Okay. And with regards to the number of fragments discussed, I didn't take notes at that level of detail. We discussed a variety of things.
Well, did you specifically put in your note a discussion about a fragment called C2?
Yes, we did. I did note that we discussed that item in particular.
All right. And the things that were discussed at this meeting led you to do further checking on this gun, correct?
Well, I did what I would call rechecking. It was something I had already checked, and at Dr. Sherry's request, I told him I'd take another look.
Because the coroner's office was concerned that somehow the gun was out of alignment, correct?
Objection, that calls for speculation. It calls for hearsay.
The way you've asked the question, the objection is sustained.
Were you trying to determine, as a result of this meeting, whether this gun was out of alignment?
Well, it's something I check on anyway, but I took a second look at that particular issue after this meeting.
As a matter of fact, you first discussed the fact that the barrel was in alignment, correct? The gun was in alignment, correct?
I first discussed?
You first tested the fact that this gun was in alignment, correct?
When you say
Yeah,
first
that's
tested, I examined the gun, I
sense.
did tests on the gun, and found that the cylinder to barrel
really keeping her
alignment,
composure
sometimes
pretty
referred to
damn
as
well, though.
timing, was appropriate.
Okay, and in fact, you put in your notes that the cylinder alignment was okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you also, when you were discussing the cylinder alignment, you put in your notes that the C1 does not exhibit signs of shaving, correct?
I did.
What does that mean?
When a cylinder is out of alignment with the barrel or the timing is wrong, let me back up a little bit because it's important that we understand how a revolver works so that this will make any sense. We discussed a revolver last Thursday and we actually looked at the very firearm. It has a cylinder which contains the ammunition. That cylinder rotates one position at a time. In the case of this firearm, it rotates clockwise. And what it does is it lines up one of its firing chambers and the cartridge within the firing chamber with the barrel. And it does that prior to the hammer falling. Depends on the mode of fire, single or double action, to determine exactly when that is. But nonetheless, it lines up with the barrel. If it's in proper timing or proper alignment, the bullet will pass directly out of the cylinder and into the barrel without hitting anything on the side, if you will. I'm trying to keep my terminology.
I think this is real. This is insane. Phil, are you in the fucking chat right now, dude? Sarah Boone appeared on Nickelodeon 1992 game show. What the fuck? Oh my God, bro. What is happening right now? I think it's real. I think this is fucking real. Look at her. What?
Your partner there, Sarah, likes to hang out at the mall. Now, what do you do while you're just hanging at the mall, Sarah?
Well, check out guys and spend money.
Check out the dudes and spend the
Holy
cash. Your cash
shit.
or like parents' cash?
Mine.
Yeah. Come on back, because when you come back and we come back, John and Sarah heading into the zone. They're gonna try to battle Scotia. Hey, she's a hot cookie.
This is
She's
insane.
tough, but
When I click on a particular file,
I gotta find the
there's
whole
a file
episode.
inside of a file inside of a file. So when I try to open one of the files, all these different icons come up. So if I try to click on one, it says unavailable. So I keep trying to go to the next one, the next
Oh
one,
my
and the
God,
next one.
I gotta get a link to
but they're
that
all the same
after.
format, so I can't open any of those.
Not enough time. Listen, you played a great game. Time ticked a little too much. Okay, Sarah, we're going to have to take the 50 points away. You're down to 150. You're still in the lead, but control is now.
You're actually one of the...
Wow, that just blew my mind. Bro.
However, if it's out of alignment, meaning that, maybe I'll use my fingers. My left hand represents the barrel. I'm trying to make a circle with my left index finger and left thumb. And I'm doing the same with my right hand. We want them to be in alignment when the firearm is fired. So I'm holding them up one on top of the other. If it's out of alignment, meaning one circle is not right on top of the other, we could have damage to the bullet, sometimes referred to as shaving. It's essentially where a portion of the bullet is shaved off and might come out the cylinder gap of the firearm.
And the coroner's office wanted you to go back and check once more, correct?
Yes.
Because at that meeting, there was concern that this fragment had come out of the cylinder gap, correct?
Yes, that was expressed to me.
Okay. And you determined that the fragment did not come out of the cylinder gap. It had to come out of the barrel, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you went back and reported that back for the coroner's office, correct?
One way or another, yes, the information got back to the coroner's office.
When you did this test to determine whether or not there was shaving or the cylinder was out of alignment, what was your understanding as to why there was this concern from the coroner's office?
Objection, that would call for speculation.
Sustained.
Was your understanding important to you in determining how to test for the misalignment of the gun?
No, it wasn't important to me at all. I was simply testing for proper alignment and timing.
But it was your understanding that you had to go back and check to make sure this gun was properly aligned, correct?
Not that I had to, but I was asked to check a second time, which I did do.
To check first time and then a second time, correct?
Well, the first time had already occurred through my normal examination of the firearm. But because they coroner's office personnel specifically requested I take a second look. I agreed to do so.
Okay.
And checked it again and found that it was indeed in proper timing and proper alignment, just as I had found the first time.
And that one of the fragments did not exhibit any signs of shaving. In other words, it didn't leave the barrel and come out of the cylinder gap, correct?
Well, that's not what I mean by shaving, but you're correct, nothing left the cylinder gap and came out that way.
Well, you reported to them that indeed C2 was too large and the wrong shape to come out of the cylinder gap, correct?
I can take a look. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And C2 was one of the fragments found in the back of the throat of Lana Clarkson, correct?
That was my understanding. Specifically where, I don't know.
Okay. So when you did the distance determination, did the alignment or the request to check for possible misalignment have anything to do or affect your distance determinations in any way?
It did not.
Okay. And in fact, indeed, it didn't affect it. You confirmed that your distance determination was that the muzzle to target distance was 2 inches or less, correct?
Well, my determination assumed that because I didn't have the opportunity to measure Ms. Clarkson's mouth and see how far open she could, how wide she could open it, I relied on how far I could open my mouth and a few of my colleagues who agreed to participate in my study. So it was based on that information, and 2 inches outside of the mouth was the absolute maximum, assuming she didn't have some unusually large mouth. That was the absolute maximum in terms of how far away the gun could have been, and yet have no stippling and gunpowder particles embedded in her throat. And this is based on the powder pattern testing alone.
But when you did the final testing, you confirmed that indeed this barrel was inside the mouth.
Based on additional information, correct.
That was your final determination, correct?
Yes, ultimately, the barrel was inside the mouth, and in fact, the front sight was beyond the 2 top front teeth. I think those are called incisors.
And before we discussed going backwards to this distance determination that you were testing for, we discussed the sound test. Remember that just earlier today?
Yes.
And one was your back to the door, like here, okay? And one was in the line of sight where you were actually facing the door and shooting somebody, like here, correct?
Well, I wasn't shooting anybody. I was shooting into a bullet trap.
Right, we understand that, but you were trying to determine if a shot had been fired, in this case, into Ms. Clarkson, whether or not it could be heard outside, right?
Every point.
I wasn't even considering who was shot. You're adding a lot of information that I wasn't at all concerned about. I was simply firing a firearm in the foyer, once with my back, or on a number of occasions with my back to the door to impede the propagation of sound, and other times with my back away from the door, nothing between the firearm and the door.
All right. And you said the detectives were the ones who told you about the placement of possibly back to the door or line of sight, correct? As to where you would be standing, correct?
Well, no, we considered how to come up with a thorough test. We wanted to test what I refer to in my notes as worst case scenario, where there was something, which was me, between the source of the noise and the door. And from a sound standpoint, that's the worst case scenario I could produce for this testing. And then another situation, which is the opposite extreme, where there's nothing in between the source of the noise, which is the firearm, and the door.
And the detectives asked you to test anything else regard to the door, specifically related to the door?
We're referring to at the Grandview location? I mean, while
From the Grandview location.
Maybe you can narrow it down for me. I'm not sure what you mean.
You went there on February 4th, 2003. Was there a doorknob on the door?
You know, I wasn't even paying attention.
Was there a door lock, a thumb lock on the door?
I just wasn't paying attention to the hardware on the door.
Did you ever come to learn whether or not that thumb lock had been removed?
I received an item of evidence. I received a thumb turn. A thumb turn is if you have a deadbolt lock in your home where on the outside you put a key in it, but on the inside you turn that little knob to lock it and unlock it, that knob itself is called a thumb turn. And I did receive such an item in evidence that I subsequently analyzed.
Okay. And it was your understanding that that came from the house on Grandview Avenue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one of the things that you were asked to do was test that thumb lock, correct?
Yes.
It'd be fair to say that you were asked to test the death gun, right?
I was.
And you were asked to test the thumb lock, correct?
Yes.
And it was a cast-plated, brass-colored thumb lock, right?
It was cast metal, brass-plated.
And the set,
it was a thumb turn.
Sorry, and the set screw was in it, correct, when you got it?
Yes, there was a set screw.
Okay. And you actually had a meeting to discuss how to approach that evidence in this case, that thumb lock, correct? On 2/26/03.
I had a meeting. It wasn't to discuss how to perform my test. It was basically to receive the request of what I was being asked to test for.
But I asked you, did you have a meeting to discuss how to approach?
Showing a little bit of love, a little ghosty love. Hell yeah, spooky season is upon us. And yeah, as I said earlier, Shelly was on X showing off her last year's movie marathon. I can't believe we've been on Kick for that long. That's what's crazy. But this year I'm going to try to, and I should be, I don't even think I need to say try, doing another all night long, hopefully, movie marathon. And that's another one. Hell yeah, halfway to another wheel. Looks like that one will probably be finishing up on Tuesday Night Murder Church at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going to tap out. I think we've made it 48 minutes into an hour 28. Do not let me forget that. I should be able to remember, but sometimes I forget that when I start back up. I got to get some food. That's what I'm about to do right now. But please, if you guys could do me an insane freaking favor. Over on my second channel, I just dropped a new video. It's like 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It's an insane story of a backstage real-life fight between two real crazy wrestlers, but it's a wild-ass story. If you guys could go show that some love, give it some likes, let me know what you think about it. I put a lot of work into the detail of the actual presentation of the story, the script, putting a lot of work into those videos and trying to build that channel. And if you guys could show some love on that, I would freaking appreciate it. Buzz Nation, come through. But yeah, you'll see me back here, of course, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here for Murder Church. And we're going to be continuing this testimony, part 3 with James Carroll. And then, yeah. And then Wednesday night, yeah, another episode for Stephen Stearns, the interviews. Episode 2 is going to be coming at you Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Going to have 2 special guests there. 3, really. Chris Stewart as well. And, yeah, it's going to be a great show. Going to be a great week. Everyone kick today's ass before we get to this week. But once we get to this week, we're going to kick its ass as well. Freaking love you guys. And, yeah, I'm going to post it in there one more time. Go check out that video. Go do it. Get that thing pumping. Get that thing pumping through the YouTube algorithm. Boom. Later, guys. Love y'all. Have a good one. I'm going to get something to eat, so for real. Love you.